Chapter 139. The battle between Long Houchen and Abao was completely different from when he faced the 8th grade Jacques leader. At that time, he was the leader of the team, and he shouldered the heavy responsibility of rescuing the other monster hunters. Therefore, he had to give the enemy the heaviest blow in the shortest time possible. Therefore, he didn't hesitate to fuse with Haoyue and Yiting at the cost of a long period of weakness, erupting into his strongest state, and subduing the enemy with a strong and fierce attack. But the situation in front of him was different. First of all, Abao's strength was absolutely incomparable to that of the Jacques leader. Even if Long Houchen fused with Haoyue, it would still be impossible to kill him in a limited time. And at this time, Long Houchen's ancient skills from the Tower of Eternity and the sword intent from the aria of the Goddess of Light were his best choices. As a god-favored, a year of seclusion allowed Long Houchen to truly fuse the two into one. His strength could not be simply described by spiritual power. Long Houchen was very clear that if he had a chance to defeat Abao, it would come from his own sword intent, sword heart, and sword skills. When Long Houchen made the first strike, he had already disregarded life and death. Everything in the outside world had nothing to do with him. In his eyes and heart, there was only his opponent. He had completely entered the realm of brilliant sword heart and sword intent as one. His body moved at will, and his sword moved according to his heart. A simple attack in his hands naturally turned the rotten into the magical. Coupled with the aria of the Goddess of Light, 2 consecutive strikes actually forced Abao to retreat twice. However, the Abao that Long Houchen was facing at this time was, after all, not the one he had met in Dream Paradise. At that time, Abao was restricted by the rules of Dream Paradise, and his internal spiritual power could only be used up to the upper limit of 10,000. Moreover, all of Long Houchen's actions were also protected by Dream Paradise, so he could suppress Abao. But at this time, he was facing Abao in his complete state, who had learned from his painful experience and improved. When he retreated for the second time, Abao had already launched a counterattack. His left foot heavily stepped on the ground, and in the midst of a violent roar, the surging dark spiritual power surged into the sky like a geyser, completely covering Abao's figure. When Long Houchen slid forward and stabbed the purple light pillar for the third time like a lightning bolt, the sword light that erupted from the aria of the Goddess of Light was instantly bounced off the purple light pillar. A heavy chop, a simple heavy chop. Pa growled out in rage while the purple-black heavy sword held in his right hand violently swung out. At that very moment, that purple-black beam of light instantly merged with the heavy sword, transforming into a 10 meters long, terrifying sword light, swooshing straight towards Long Houchen, as if all gods were scared away by it. At the same time, within a radius of 30 meters, all the air was instantly sucked out by the stagnant dark spiritual power, and the space completely collapsed. Long Houchen couldn't retreat even if he wanted to, and his body was also extremely sluggish. As the crown prince of demons, Abao's talent was not much worse than Long Houchen's. When Long Houchen made the first strike, he felt that he was still not this human's opponent in terms of skills. However, skills would never mean victory in a battle. Although Abao was strong, he was not inflexible. He would never use his weak points to attack the enemy's strong point. Long Houchen's sword intent, sword heart, and fighting skills had advantages, but Abao's advantage was even more obvious, and that was his terrifying spiritual power, which was 10 times that of Long Houchen. Long Houchen's forward steps came to an abrupt halt. The tip of his left foot touched the ground, and his knees bent to absorb the force. At the same time, he let go of the ripple of light in his left hand, letting it fall directly to the ground and land on the tip of his left foot. At the same time, he held the aria of the Goddess of Light with both hands and made a surprising move. Twisting his body, sticking out his chest, and raising the divine sword, his feeling could no longer be described as flowing water. The most accurate way to describe it was as a whole. The man and the sword formed a perfect whole. A layer of dark golden halo spread from his feet and finally condensed at the tip of the aria of the goddess of light. The soft halo quietly erupted and bloomed, lightly colliding with the terrifying huge purple and black sword light. No, it was not appropriate to use the word collision to describe it. It should be called contact. Long Houchen twisted his body and moved along with his sword, completing a 360-degree turn. Strangely, Abao's powerful attack was actually flicked to the side by him. His body slid past, and he didn't even have the chance to use his most powerful attack. At this moment, the four wings on Long Houchen's back suddenly flapped, and his whole body rushed forward like a swimming fish, sticking close to the ground. He lifted the tip of his left foot, and the ripple of light reappeared in his hand. The two swords in his hands almost instantly appeared in front of Abao. As Long Houchen rushed forward, the collapsed space actually split in the middle. An incomparably solid sword intent burst out from his body, cutting open the extremely compressed air. The low dragon roar instantly became high-pitched, and dark golden flames burst out. In the short time that he glided close to the ground, Long Houchen's momentum had risen to the peak. Boom! Poe's terrifyingly powerful sword struck on the ground. Instantly, the surrounding area turned purple-black. Along with a series of thunderous booms and collapses, a terrifyingly large wound was opened up on the ground, as if an earthquake had happened. At this moment, Long Houchen had already arrived in front of Abao, and his whole body swept towards Abao like a whirlwind. If anyone could see Long Houchen's movements clearly, they would clearly see that the ripple of light in his left hand was the first to stab forward, transforming into thousands of sword gleams that instantly merged into one, condensing into a point, and heading straight for Abao's right wrist that was holding the sword. The aria of the goddess of light in his right hand stuck close to the ground, and a terrifying golden rainbow swept out, slashing towards Abao's body with a loud dragon roar. Moreover, this terrifying golden rainbow was not huge, and was even smaller than the sword gleam emitted by the aria of the goddess of light. However, it was completely solid and dark golden, as if it had a physical body. Abao thought that he had a very high opinion of Long Houchen, but in his heart, Long Houchen was still a human knight who was not even at the 7th rank. He had never thought that his thunderous attack could be neutralized by Long Houchen in such a way. Moreover, Long Houchen could launch a close-range attack immediately. Long Houchen's timing of this attack was too good, and it was precisely the gap after Abao's all-out attack. Moreover, the speed at which he cut in was extremely fast, and he was not affected by the eruption of the purplish-black sword gleam at all. Rising Dragon Strike. Yes, Long Houchen's aria of the goddess of light had used the Rising Dragon Strike, but it was not upward, but straight forward. With the improvement of his cultivation, his application of these knight skills had reached a whole new level, and he did not need to rigidly adhere to the skills themselves. It could be said that any skill in his hands could be used creatively. A faint light flickered, and the depths of Long Houchen's eyes blossomed. The dense dark golden color of the mithril foundation battle armor was like a viscous liquid that clung to the surface of the armor. Facing the attack of Long Houchen's dual swords, Abao could not make any movement to counterattack. However, he was also very experienced in actual combat. Seeing that he was about to suffer, he decisively made the right choice and abandoned his swords. Long Houchen was already too close to him, and his purplish-black greatsword was much larger than Long Houchen's aria of the goddess of light. Moreover, he had just launched an all-out attack, and there was no time for him to return to support himself. Instead, it became a hindrance. He decisively let go, and as he retreated, his left hand turned into a palm and slapped toward the ripple of light, while his right hand condensed into a fist and directly smashed down, colliding with the sword gleam that swept out from the aria of the goddess of light. Abao's left hand was pierced by the ripple of light, and it immediately felt as if it had been struck by leather. The ripple of light rippled slightly and was deflected. However, this radiance-grade heavy sword was imbued with the power of the demon extinguishing flash in the attack of 10,000 swords as one, and it left a bloody wound on Abao's left hand. When Long Houchen's self-created ripple of light was unleashed to the extreme by the ripple of light, even Abao, who had tens of thousands of external spiritual power, could not completely resist it. At the same time, a collision occurred on the other side. There was no violent roar, but when Abao's fist bombarded the aria of the Goddess of Light, he was shocked to find that he actually felt like he had used up all his strength. In his previous consciousness, Long Houchen's aria of the Goddess of Light had the possibility of threatening his life. Therefore, he had already used all his strength in this punch. At the moment when Poe's fist bumped against the sword edge, he felt that a part of the power contained in his fist had been forcibly absorbed by the dark golden heavy sword held in Long Houchen's hand, and a very large part of it had been absorbed. Then, Long Houchen's body spiraled up under the effect of this power, unloading the remaining power of this punch. The dark golden light suddenly converged, but Long Houchen's body was already sweeping toward him like a rapidly spinning vortex. In fact, when Abao was dealing with Long Houchen's attack, he had already been fooled. Long Houchen was facing him, but when he attacked, his left hand attacked his left hand, and his right hand attacked his right hand. In other words, Long Houchen's two swords were crossed and attacked. Therefore, after receiving the force, his whole body immediately felt like it was spiraling. There was no need for him to face Abao's monstrous strength head-on. He only needed to go all out to borrow the force. Battle-killing revolving sword. The complete version, or rather, the evolved version of battle-killing revolving sword. At this moment, Long Houchen's sword intent burst out fully, and the extremely terrifying sword intent spread throughout the entire battlefield like a blowout. Be it the demons or the humans, everyone was watching this battle in front of them, and their eyes were dull. Even Long Houchen's companions showed a look of disbelief. Yes, this was really incredible. What kind of strength did Abao have? He was a terrifying existence at the peak of rank 8, with an internal spiritual energy of nearly 100,000. However, since the beginning of this battle, Long Houchen had completely suppressed Abao. Not only had he been leading Abao by the nose, but he also had the absolute upper hand. Every time he made a move, it could be said that he had clearly predicted Abao's intentions. Under such circumstances, Abao was obviously suffering a big loss. In midair, Long Houchen had already turned into a dark golden light wheel, with a monstrous sword intent as if it was attached to Abao's body, and it erupted powerfully. The attack speed of Long Houchen's battle-killing revolving sword was really too fast. Even if the creator of the battle-killing revolving sword, Long Xingwu, was here, as long as he suppressed his internal spiritual energy to the same level as Long Houchen, he would definitely not be able to display the battle-killing revolving sword so perfectly. Long Xingwu's battle-killing revolving sword also had sword intent, but it was on a completely different level from the sword intent that Long Houchen comprehended from the aria of the Goddess of Light. Long Houchen's internal spiritual energy was indeed far inferior to Abao's, and the same was true for his external spiritual energy. However, every slash of his sword gave Abao a feeling that he was unable to resist. Unity of man and nature, it was very simple to say. But how many people could really achieve it? It was not as simple as adding all the power of one's equipment, internal and external spiritual energy, and the spiritual stove into one. What's more, don't forget that the greatest secret of the battle-killing revolving sword was to borrow strength. The increasingly powerful pressure forced the crown demons, Abao, to step back step by step. He only felt that the sword intent that erupted from Long Houchen's swords was getting stronger and stronger. Every slash was so heavy, and he himself had lost his weapon. He didn't even have the energy to use his mind to control the heavy sword condensed from his horn to return. Blood splattered. It could be clearly seen that although Abao's own dark spiritual energy could block Long Houchen's swords with all his might, it could not completely resist the terrifying sword intent. Bloody wounds had begun to appear on his body. Each bloody wound was so clear and blood splattered everywhere. Yu Yi stared blankly at the battlefield. When Long Houchen walked out proudly to fight a Bao, she only felt her mind go blank. It's over, everything is over. How can I be a match for Brother Bao here? Brother Bao's strength is no longer suppressed by fantasy paradise. If they die, I will die too. For some reason, Yu Ye's mood was not fear, but an indescribable discomfort. However, when the battle really started, everything did not go according to the script in her heart. The powerful A Bao was actually completely suppressed by Long Houchen. The spiritual energy gap between the two sides seemed to have disappeared. The attack power of the peak 6th order Long Houchen was probably not comparable to that of an ordinary 8th order expert. Each of his swords indeed only had 10,000 spiritual energy points, but under the enhancement of a full set of legendary equipment, under the enhancement of the terrifying sword intent, how could it be described with 10,000 spiritual energy points? Light and darkness collided, and the pure light had clearly surpassed the powerful darkness. The advantage in attributes was fully used by Long Houchen, and the upgraded version of the battle-killing revolving sword blossomed with a strong dark golden luster. Roar! Under the continuous setbacks, a Bao roared to the sky, and a strange energy wave suddenly burst out from his body. Dragon's might. The dragon's might of the heaven-defying demon dragon. Long Houchen, who was spiraling rapidly in the air, suddenly appeared to be a little scattered, and the spinning battle-killing revolving sword finally showed a moment of pause. In the distance, Long Houchen's 4 big heads' eyes flashed purple, and their powerful claws subconsciously scratched the ground, but they still endured and did not launch an attack. Taking advantage of Long Houchen's momentary pause, a Bao suddenly took a step back, and then a layer of dazzling black erupted from his body. The black was gloomy, but why could it make people feel a dazzling feeling? This was because the intent emitted by the black was too sharp and strong. The black light did not spread too far and only enveloped Poe's body. One could clearly see that the black light condensed into a black dragon that was baring its fangs and brandishing its claws as it hovered around Poe's body. When Long Houchen's battle-killing revolving sword caught up again, it could not collide with a Bao's body, but collided with the black light. Demon Dragon Immortal Body. A powerful skill of the heaven-defying demon dragon tribe. Pa stood inside the light screen created by the immortal body of the devil dragon, coldly staring at those dark golden spheres of light that had been hovering in the air and attacking him ceaselessly while letting out ear-piercing noises. Poe's pair of blood-red eyes seemed to be bleeding. At this time, purple blood was oozing out of a Bao's body, and there were countless fine cracks on his scales. All of this was caused by the sword intent of the 2 heavy swords in Long Houchen's hands. A Bao took a deep breath, took half a step back with his right foot, retracted his right fist to his waist, and put his left hand in a strange position in front of his chest. Under the fierce display of power, the tyrannical dark energy was instantly raised to the extreme. A huge purplish-black shadow appeared behind him, and one could vaguely see that it was a huge purplish-black pillar with a giant dragon spiraling on it. Wasn't that the first demon god pillar of Demon Emperor? The feeling of the air collapsing appeared again, but this time, it was not limited to a range of tens of square meters, but everyone present could feel the space collapsing. There was even a huge suction force sucking their bodies. The purplish-black color on a Bao's body instantly turned completely black, and even his blood-red eyes were the same. It was also at this moment that the look in his eyes changed completely. It became extremely focused and powerful. It was as if he was the only one in the world. Fist intent. Yes, if what Long Houchen used was sword intent, then what a Bao burst out at this time was the terrifying fist intent based on the heaven-defying demon dragon clan's bloodline. After all, his cultivation was much higher than Long Houchen's, so the area affected by the fist intent was also much larger than Long Houchen's. The 2 monster hunters teams were horrified at the same time. A Bao's punch had not even been launched, but it had already displayed such terrifying power. What if he really launched it? How terrifying would that be? Everyone could see that although a Bao seemed to be covered in blood, they were actually just superficial wounds, and his foundation was not hurt. And how long could Long Houchen's full power burst last? No one knew. At this moment, Long Houchen, who was originally spinning rapidly, suddenly stopped when he slashed the light shield again. The 4 wings on his back spread out, and his whole body hovered in the air. The flowing light in the 4 wings suddenly surged toward the tip of the sword, and the aria of the goddess of light began to tremble slightly. Meanwhile, Long Houchen, who was hovering in the air, closed his eyes, and his whole body entered a strange state. A Bao's cold eyes were fixed on Long Houchen, and when he saw this scene, he could not help but be slightly shocked. The reason was very simple. Wasn't Long Houchen in this state the same as when he had smashed his horn with the sword? The ripples of light disappeared again, but this time, they disappeared in the eternal melody. Long Houchen held the aria of the goddess of light with both hands, and slightly raised his head to the sky. A dazzling golden color suddenly appeared on his body, and this golden color was like a tinder, igniting all the light in the sky. A strange buzzing sound similar to Sanskrit singing rang in the air, and the feeling of the space collapsing behind Long Houchen instantly disappeared. A soft golden light quietly rose behind him, and in the strange buzzing sound of Sanskrit singing, an illusory golden light shadow slowly appeared. The light shadow was very illusory, and only had a faint golden color. One could vaguely see that it seemed to be a human figure, and the rest was a large expanse of gold, and one could not see its actual body. The aria of the goddess of light in Long Houchen's hand emitted a strange luster, and the originally edgeless heavy sword at this moment emitted an extremely sharp aura. What was more frightening was that this sharpness gave people a completely opposite feeling of softness. Humans and demons felt completely different. All the demon hunters felt like they were bathing in a spring breeze under this golden light. The King Stage number 17 monster hunters who had previously burned the flame of life only felt warm and indescribably comfortable, as if even their vitality was quietly recovering. A strange luster appeared on Long Houchen's face, and at this moment, he gave people a kind of spiritual feeling, which was different from his appearance in Dream Paradise. Stepping forward, punching forward, the heaven-defying demon dragon's fist will instantly erupted. As the crown prince of demons, being able to borrow a certain amount of power from the first demon god pillar meant that a Bao, the heir, had begun to evolve into the true first demon god. The terrifying fist will seem to completely tear the void, and endless black, like a black hole opened in front of Long Houchen, as if to completely swallow his body. And at this moment, Long Houchen's sword also lightly slashed down. The dark gold color of the sword turned back to gold again, but it was a magnificent rainbow gold color. The 7 colors that Kai Hong possessed, red, orange, yellow, green, cyan, blue, and purple, all mixed with the gold color and appeared on his sword. From red gold to purple gold, the whole process was very fast, but it gave people the feeling that a dazzling rainbow red quietly fell under the light of the sun. At the moment when the sword and the fist collided in the air, there was no instant explosion. Instead, they were stuck together, and there was a short pause. At this moment, Long Houchen also opened his eyes. His eyes were filled with a soft white halo. It was a sharp contrast to a Bao's black eyes. Their eyes were wild and explosive and soft and gentle, but the collision produced incomparable sparks. The next moment the roar finally appeared. Amidst the terrifying explosion, an extremely terrifying halo suddenly exploded at the center of the collision, turning into a circle of golden and black light that suddenly spread out. Be it the demon hunters or the demon hunters, their first reaction at this moment was to turn around and run, and all of them used their best defensive skills. Even so, in the terrifying explosion, these people and demons were knocked down by the tyrannical shock wave like wheat being reaped. Poe's body slid against the ground like a black arrow. He tried his best to control his own body, but failed no matter how hard he tried. The wounds on his body were like crushed oranges as he retreated, and blood splattered everywhere. His face instantly turned pale. Long Houchen was the opposite. His dazzling golden figure soared into the sky under the huge impact. But there was one thing they had in common, and that was that the light they emitted was dim. The light from the aria of the goddess of light in Long Houchen's hands had completely dimmed. Yiting's figure flashed and directly merged into Long Houchen's body. As Long Houchen was completely covered by the Mithril Foundation battle armor, he couldn't see anything. But what he could see was that there were countless wrinkles on his legendary grade armor, just like a pool of water that had been wrinkled by the wind. It seemed that, if it was just a little more intense, the Mithril Foundation battle armor would be completely destroyed. The battlefield was silent. At this moment, everyone felt like they couldn't speak. What a terrifying collision this was! A Pinnacle Tier 6 powerhouse collided with a Pinnacle Tier 8 powerhouse, and it actually produced such a terrifying energy wave. Even if Long Houchen lost, he could be proud. Furthermore, from the current situation, Long Houchen might not necessarily lose. The first to climb up from the ground was a black figure with a head of lavender hair. Just when everyone was still in shock from the terrifying collision, she had already quietly disappeared into the air like a ghost. And because of the terrifying collision, no one noticed her existence and actions at this moment. Pa finally regained control of his retreating body. That purple-black heavy sword reappeared in his hand. He gripped the sword hilt with both of his hands and stuck the sword into the ground to support his body. A trace of profoundness appeared in his eyes. Long Houchen's body slowly descended from the air. The Mithril Foundation battle armor had already revealed its original bright silver color, and not the gold that Long Houchen had infused with spiritual energy. Both of their gazes met from afar, neither giving way. I didn't expect you to be able to borrow divine power. No wonder you dared to accept my challenge. Abao's voice was cold and solemn, and there were no signs of injury. Long Houchen said indifferently, "Didn't you borrow the power of the first demon god pillar?" As his body descended, the distance between both sides closed. The demon hunters and demon exterminators also climbed up, and looked at the two of them with lingering fear. The demon exterminators slowly pressed towards the inner circle, while the demon hunters continued to gather together. The close combat professions were on the outside, and the magic professions were on the inside. Both sides were prepared for battle. Abao said solemnly, "I have to admit, you are the most worthy opponent in my life. As a human, you are younger than me, and your cultivation is weaker than mine. Yet, you can rely on your own strength to fight me to this extent. You are already worthy of my respect. If our spiritual energy were equal, I believe that I would not be your match. Even if I used the demon dragon's true form, it would still be the same." Long Houchen had already slowly floated to the ground. The moment his feet touched the ground, his body staggered uncontrollably. He hurriedly used his divine sword to support himself, and only then did he stand firm. Only Long Houchen's companions knew how bad his current situation was, because when Long Houchen and Abao collided, the life-sharing of the soul chain was already activated. At this moment, all the General Tier Monster Hunt 64 members, except for Kair who was hidden in the air, were all pale with blood flowing from the corners of their mouths. They were all seriously injured. One could imagine how terrifying Abao's fist intent was. Abao was right. As a god's favored, Long Houchen borrowed the power of the goddess of light for his last attack. Otherwise, he would not have been able to block Abao's fist intent. No matter how strong his sword intent was, it would not be able to burst out enough power without enough spiritual energy to drive it. Long Houchen, who was wearing a full set of legendary equipment, coupled with the fusion of Yiting, in fact, his cultivation was almost close to the 8th rank. However, There was still a world of difference between the spiritual energy of the two sides, not to mention that Abao was a heaven-defying demon dragon and had tens of thousands of external spiritual energy. It seemed that Abao's injuries were serious, but in fact, Long Houchen's injuries were much more serious than Abao's. If not for the life-sharing of his companions, the collision just now would have shattered Long Houchen's body under the protection of the Mithril Foundation battle armor. What a pity! Abao suddenly shook his head gently. Long Houchen smiled indifferently and said, "You want to break your promise, don't you?" Abao sneered, "Break my promise? No, our battle is not over yet. Let's consider it a temporary tie. How can I be considered to be breaking my promise? If I were just an ordinary demon, then I would be deeply honored to have an opponent like you to spur me on. I would definitely defeat you with my own strength. I would trample you under my feet and let you become a stepping stone for me to reach the peak. Unfortunately, I'm not an ordinary demon. I'm also the crown prince of demons, the son of Demon Emperor, and the future successor of the first demon god. I can't watch you continue to improve. The future of a god's favored is unpredictable. I admit that I don't have absolute confidence to defeat you in the future. In that case, for the sake of the demons, I can only strangle you in the cradle." Long Houchen also smiled. "What you said is very reasonable. If you give me another 3 years, you will never be my opponent. I also never thought that you would keep your promise. It seems that our battle can only continue the next time we meet. I hope that you will still have such good luck to form the current situation at that time." Abao smiled. This time, his smile was no longer cold. "What? Do you think you have a chance of escaping today?" Long Houchen said calmly, "Why not? Actually, you are now an arrow at the end of its flight. I admit that my situation is worse than yours. However, you have subordinates besieging us. Do you think I don't have any companions?" Abao's expression changed, and his heart was suddenly alarmed. However, he didn't feel any threat. At that moment, a black figure quietly appeared in the midst of the demon exterminators. The black figure was petite and slender. The moment she appeared, none of the demon hunters noticed her in advance. Huge black wings spread open, and an extremely terrifying murderous intent erupted. The demon hunters were all powerhouses above the 7th grade. However, at that moment all of them felt fear. The tangible murderous intent hit them, and every demon hunter could clearly feel the danger they were in. It was an extremely terrifying and absolute pressure, endless coldness. Immediately afterward, a streak of black light flashed through the air. The black light appeared to be very thin, but in the instant that it flashed, the 4 7th-tier devilish beings instantly stiffened. In the next instant all of their life force auras vanished. The black figure finally revealed itself completely. A pitch-black dagger that emitted a gray glow was placed lightly on Yu Ye's neck. A small, fair hand hugged Yu Ye's slender waist from behind. Her eyes were filled with darkness as she looked at Abao. Everything happened too quickly. Yu Yi felt as if her blood had frozen under the extreme coldness. Her body couldn't even tremble. The hidden force of the sword of samsara in her body seemed to be affected by the murderous intent and could erupt at any time. No one could have foreseen this sudden turn of events. Everything happened too quickly. From the moment Kai attacked to the moment she held Yu Yi hostage, only a breath's time had passed. The cold expression on Po's face instantly froze. Among all the demon hunter removers, the only one he cared about was Yu Yi. She was his fiancée, and all the other demon hunter removers knew this. If it wasn't for her status, with her stage 6 cultivation, it would have been impossible for Yu Yi to become a demon hunter remover. It was Abao's suggestion that allowed the Demon Emperor to specially approve Yu Yi to join Abao's dragon group. Nobody move. Otherwise, I can't guarantee that the sword in Kai Er's hand won't tremble, Long Houchen said coldly. Abao gritted his teeth so hard that they nearly broke. Bastard, threatening a woman, is this the chivalry of you humans? Long Houchen smiled indifferently. Just like how you, the crown prince of the demons, will also be flexible and no longer keep your promise. From my perspective, I wasn't the one who attacked. Naturally, it has nothing to do with the night spirit. Abao said coldly, "Do you think that you can threaten me by holding one of my companions hostage?" Long Houchen shook his head and said, "If it's an ordinary companion, of course it won't work. However, if I remember correctly, Crown Prince Bao has a fiancée. She's the daughter of the second pillar of the demons, Moon Demon Agars. Her name is Yu Yi. Am I right?" As soon as Long Houchen said this, Abao's expression finally changed. Now that his background had been seen through, his disguise was no longer useful. The two of them looked at each other, but the other demon hunters didn't dare to make the slightest move. For the sake of Yu Yi, Abao had taken the risk of contradicting the demon emperor. Everyone in the upper echelons of the demons knew about it. In the end, he was recognized by the demon emperor. Moreover, even without considering this, Yu Yi was also the favorite daughter of the moon demon Agars. If she died in the hands of these demon hunters, it would definitely cause an uproar among the demons. Chapter 140. What do you want? Abao was almost gnashing his teeth as he said this. His fiancée was actually restrained by the other party despite having the absolute advantage. This huge humiliation was no less than when his horn was shattered by Long Houchen. If his horn was shattered, it could still grow back with the powerful vitality of the heaven-defying demon dragon clan. However, if something happened to Yu Yi, how would he explain to the moon demon Agars? How would he explain to his father? To put it more seriously, if Yu Yi died, Agar's attitude towards him would definitely take a sharp turn for the worse, and it might even affect his future succession as the Demon Emperor. Before he left Demon City, Demon Emperor Feng Xiu had a private conversation with him and clearly told him that although he was now the first-in-line successor, the Demon Emperor had already found the second-in-line successor, and the second-in-line successor's potential was not much less than his. Therefore, if he made any mistakes, it was likely to affect his future succession. In Abao's heart, power and position were naturally the most important. However, his love for Yu Yi was also serious. It could be said that in his heart, Yu Yi could even be compared with the succession of the Demon Emperor's power and position. However, this showed how important Yu Yi was in his heart. Long Houchen said in a deep voice, "You should know what I want." A fierce glint flashed in Abao's eyes. At this moment, he was so depressed that he almost wanted to vomit blood. In the previous battle with Long Houchen, it could be said that both of them were injured. Because of the obstruction of the armor, he could not see Long Houchen's current condition, but he was completely sure that Long Houchen's injuries were definitely not lighter than his. If the battle continued, with his own foundation, he was still confident that he could kill Long Houchen. However, all along, Long Houchen was always able to erupt with combat power that exceeded his own strength. Abao was not confident that he could kill Long Houchen while avoiding the consequences of him being seriously injured. What he feared the most was that the consequences would be irreversible. This was because Long Houchen's light attribute was simply too pure. If such a pure light attribute invaded the depths of his body, it would be very difficult for him to resolve it. Demons' origin came from their demonic crystals. Even for a powerful existence like the heaven-defying demon dragon clan, once their origin was affected, it would greatly affect their future cultivation and advancement. This was something Abao could never accept. His goal was to one day become a powerful existence like his father. He even wanted to surpass his father. How could he risk injuring his origin source to fight against Long Houchen? However, Long Houchen's ability also made him extremely vigilant. Just as he said, Long Houchen made him feel a great threat. A god's chosen one had not appeared among humans for many years. Long Houchen could actually borrow the divine power of the goddess of light, and he was still so young. Once he was allowed to grow up, no one could say how great the threat he could bring to the demons in the future would be. Bao was the heir of the Demon Emperor. He himself felt that he was not sure that he could defeat Long Houchen in the future, let alone the other demons. The consequences of letting such a human grow into a Type 9 powerhouse were too terrifying. At least, no one among the Type 9 powerhouses that the humans currently had could compare to him. It would definitely form a trend of being too big to be dealt with. It might even be more troublesome than the fall of the demon god that could threaten the demon emperor now. Therefore, even if Bao was unwilling to kill Long Houchen in this way, for the future of the demons, for his future rule, he still had to do it. Although he was a little headstrong, he was absolutely smart. To be able to become the heir of the demon emperor, it was not enough to rely on courage alone. But who knew that at this moment there would be a problem? Now he was faced with a difficult choice. Release the tiger back to the mountain or lose his most beloved woman, causing the moon demon to hate him. What to do? Bao knew that the time given to him to consider was very short. If he hesitated too much, even if he saved Yu Yi in the end, he was afraid that Yu Yi would resent him in her heart. It could be seen that the muscles on both sides of Bao's cheeks were completely wrinkled, and the muscle lines were constantly fluctuating, showing the extent of his resentment and depression at this time. Okay, I'll let you go. Let Yu Yi go. Bao almost roared this sentence. Long Houchen finally breathed a sigh of relief in his heart. He turned to look at Kair and gave her a look. However, in the next moment, it was Long Houchen who felt as if he had fallen into an ice cellar. Because, when his gaze met Kair's gaze, which was brimming with killing intent and was immersed in indifference, he shockingly discovered that he didn't receive even the slightest response from Kai. Kair still maintained her previous posture. The sword of Samsara in her hand was placed across Yu Ye's neck, but her whole body was like a statue. Moreover, because she was hugging Yu Yi, it seemed that she and Yu Yi were one at this time. Not good. Long Houchen, who had experienced a similar situation, was instantly shocked. He suddenly realized something. Forcibly suppressing the shock and panic in his heart, Long Houchen clenched his teeth and tried his best to suppress the weak state of his body at this time. He calmed himself down and said indifferently, "You have already broken your promise once. How can I trust you this time? It's obviously impossible for me to let your fiancé off now." As he spoke, Long Houchen slowly walked in the direction of Kair and Princess Yu Yi as if he did not see Bao's gaze. His steps were very slow, and he even needed to use the aria of the Goddess of Light in his hand as a crutch to support his body. However, the demon hunter removers could not help but reveal some fear in their eyes. The battle between Long Houchen and Bao naturally shocked not only Bao, but the demon hunter removers also felt the same way. The intensity of Long Houchen's spiritual power was nothing in their eyes, but the terrifying battle intent and fighting skills that could even harm the heaven-defying demon dragon were deeply feared by them. A large number of demon hunter removers rushed forward and surrounded Kair and Yu Yi, preventing Long Houchen from approaching them. Long Houchen stopped in his tracks and turned to Bao again. "It seems that you have no sincerity at all. Kair, kill her." "No." Bao suddenly took a step forward and shouted, "Get out of the way, let him pass." The demon hunter removers then made way for him. However, at this moment, Long Houchen was not in a hurry to go over. He smiled and said, "It seems that your highness really values your fiancé. Get your men to make way and let my companions leave first. Kair and I will stay here. Once they leave the battlefield, we will naturally return Yu Yi to you." At this moment, the best choice was obviously for Long Houchen and Kair to hold Yu Yi hostage and lead their companions away. Seeing how much importance Bao had shown to Yu Yi, he could only accept it. However, Long Houchen could not bring Kair away. Only he knew how terrible his current physical condition was. Even if it was just an ordinary demon hunter remover who came up to touch him, he was afraid that he would immediately collapse. How could it be that easy to fight against the peak of the 8th stage Bao? From the first collision, When Long Houchen used his sword intent to negate a Bao's attack, he had already been injured. Moreover, the last collision caused him to fall into a near-death state. At this moment, he could still stand here completely by relying on his willpower. Even he himself did not know how much longer he could hold on. After listening to Long Houchen's words, Bao was slightly stunned. He had always been decisive. Since he had already made up his mind, he would not hesitate too much. He suddenly waved his hand, gesturing for everyone to make way for the two teams of monster hunters to leave. Tianqing stood there, seemingly in a daze. He did not expect that he and his companions could actually leave this place alive. The battle between Long Houchen and Bao had indeed intimidated all the demon exterminators, but how could it not have intimidated them as well? Tianqing had already faintly felt that if they were to fight with all their strength, he would definitely not be a match for Long Houchen. And he was a Mithril Foundation Knight. At the same time, Long Houchen's performance made Tianqing faintly feel that he had an extraordinary position in the Knights Templars. With such a young age, such a cultivation base, such strength, how could an ordinary knight achieve it? At that time, Tianqing had made up his mind to protect Long Houchen and leave this place alive no matter what. With Long Houchen's cultivation base and strength, he was too important to the Knights Templars. However, the situation in front of him changed drastically. The originally absolute disadvantage actually turned around in an instant. When he saw Kai-Er appear, with a sweep of her sword, she actually killed 4 rank 7 demons. He was already completely numb. A rank 6 assassin killed 4 rank 7 demons in an instant. No wonder she killed a rank 8-star demon in an instant. It was completely conceivable that this young female assassin's strength was definitely not below Long Houchen's. It was just that she had been hiding in the radiance that Long Houchen emitted. Leader Tianqing, let's go quickly. Han Yu came to Tianqing's side and said softly. But Long Houchen and the rest? Tianqing said softly. Han Yu's voice became colder. If Leader Tianqing wants to help our leader, then the best choice is to leave this place as soon as possible. After saying that, he immediately turned around and called his companions to leave through the path that the demon hunter removers had left behind. Tianqing was slightly stunned. Of course, he could feel the dissatisfaction in Han Yu's words. A trace of shame immediately rose from the bottom of his heart. He looked deeply at Long Houchen, who was walking towards Kai-Er and Yu Yi. He waved his hand and said, "Let's go." With the exception of Long Houchen and Kai-Er, the 11 members of the 2 monster hunters teams quickly left. Their figures gradually disappeared from the sight of the demon hunter removers. None of the demon hunter removers dared to disobey Bao's orders. However, from their eyes, one could see the deep unwillingness. Yes, if they could annihilate 2 such powerful monster hunters teams, they could imagine the rewards they would receive. Moreover, this time, 6 demon hunter removers teams were working together. They already had the absolute advantage. At the same time that his companions left, Long Houchen had already arrived at Kai-Er's side. In this short distance of less than 100 meters, his body that was covered by the mithril pedestal armor was already soaked in sweat. Kai-Er still maintained her original posture, not moving at all, while Yu Ye's face was even more deathly pale. The only thing she could move now was her eyes. Her beautiful eyes, which had lost their luster, stared at Long Houchen as he walked in front of her. Long Houchen exchanged a slight look with her, then turned around and stood by Kai-Er's side. He did not touch Kai-Er. The closer he got, the stronger Long Houchen felt. That's right. It was exactly as he had guessed. At this critical moment, Kai-Er had awakened. Her God-blessed constitution had awakened. Last time, the Sword of Reincarnation had caused Kai-Er to enter a state of enlightenment. She was on the verge of awakening. However, at that time they were on the battlefield and had to leave as soon as possible. Therefore, Long Houchen used Eternal Melody to send Kai-Er back to the Tower of Reincarnation. This also interrupted the process of Kai Er's enlightenment. Although it only affected her slightly, it was equivalent to suppressing Kai Er's awakening. Therefore, when Kai Er woke up from her seclusion, she still could not enter the special state of awakening. The awakening of the God-blessed constitution was not something that could be achieved with hard work. Since then, Kai Er had been in seclusion, trying to break through this boundary. However, she did not succeed. She was always a step away from it. Long Houchen's judgment was correct. Kai Er was the inheritor of the sword of samsara, and her god's chosen one's physique was the inheritance of the death god. Therefore, the battlefield was the best place for her to awaken her physique. Originally, Kai Er's awakening would not have happened so quickly. However, this time, she was surrounded by the 6 demon hunter removers, and the situation was even more dangerous. This caused Kai Er's fighting spirit to rise. Finally, when she used the sword of reincarnation, she touched the bottom line of her awakening. Moreover, this was completely out of her control. After killing 4 7th-stage demon hunter removers and controlling Yu Yi, she had already entered the state of awakening. He had already lost consciousness and entered a special aura fluctuation. When Long Houchen first awakened, it was already very troublesome. This time, Kai Er's awakening was undoubtedly even more inopportune. Surrounded by enemies, Long Houchen was seriously injured. He could not move Kai Er. Long Houchen had awakened before, so he knew very well that moving her at this time could cause unpredictable consequences. Moreover, Kai Er's God-blessed constitution was different from his. The goddess of light that he inherited was a powerful divine power that was neutral and peaceful, while Kai Er's reincarnation constitution was many times more domineering. Once there was a backlash, it could very well endanger Kai Er's life. Long Houchen had never faced such a difficult situation. In his current weakened state, even if he wanted to activate the eternal melody to teleport, it would be very difficult. Moreover, how could Kai Er teleport away in the process of awakening the God-blessed constitution? What should I do? What should I do? Under a Bao's gaze, Long Houchen straightened his body and pondered silently. Your people have left. It's time to let go of Yu Yi. At this moment, a Bao's voice was heard. All the demon hunter removers had already surrounded Long Houchen and Kai Er. Chapter 141. Your people have left. It's time to let go of Yu Yi. A Bao stood less than 10 meters away from Long Houchen and stared coldly at him and Kai Er. Long Houchen made up his mind after a brief moment of consideration. He looked at Kai Er, who was standing there like a statue, with an indescribable gentleness in his eyes. Yu Yi, who was right in front of him, could see it the clearest. She couldn't describe the look in Long Houchen's eyes at that moment. There was a hint of determination in his gentle gaze, as well as an endless reluctance to part with her. In the depths of this gentleness, there was an indescribable determination. At that moment, Long Houchen's lips moved, and his forced words rang in Yu Ye's ears. Kai Er has entered a state of enlightenment because of the massacre just now. In this state, she might really hurt you. I can't touch her. Otherwise, your life will be in danger. I'll teleport you to a place. Remember, don't move your body when you're there. Just wait where you are. Next, you just have to pray that Kai Er and I can survive. Otherwise, you'll have to fend for yourself there. As he spoke, Long Houchen slowly raised his hand and pressed it on Yu Ye's shoulder. What are you doing? A Bao roared angrily. However, Long Houchen didn't even look at him. A layer of faint golden light shone from his chest. In the next instant, Yu Yi disappeared. Seeing that Yu Yi had disappeared, the demon hunter removers were about to rush over, but they were stopped by a Bao's angry shout. His ice-cold gaze was like a sharp knife that wanted to dismember Long Houchen. Where did you take Yu Yi? After sending Yu Yi away, Long Houchen suddenly became even weaker. His body swayed and he almost fell. At this moment, a Bao also realized that something was wrong. After Yu Yi disappeared, Kai Er, who was restraining Yu Yi, remained motionless. Long Houchen turned around with some difficulty and faced a Bao. I believe you have seen it clearly. Yes, because of the attack just now, my comrade suffered a backlash and is unable to move. So, you missed your best chance to kill us. I advise you not to act rashly. You should have sensed that when Princess Yu Yi left, there were spatial fluctuations. I sent her to another space. Apart from me, no one else could connect to that space. So, if I die, you will never see your fiancé again. It was definitely difficult for Long Houchen to make such a decision. Kair suddenly entered the awakened state of a favored, which completely ruined his original plan to escape. He could only let his comrades leave first. But he couldn't leave. If he left, what would happen to Kair? Anyone could leave, but he couldn't. He had to stay here to accompany Kair. Regardless of life or death, he would be with her. Before the battle between him and a Bao began, Long Houchen used his gaze to tell Kair what to do. The last time he met Yu Yi, when Yu Yi eased the restriction in her body, she told them about her marriage with a Bao. Just now, before the battle, Long Houchen sent Kair a message telling her to contact Yu Yi. When the battle between Long Houchen and a Bao was in full swing, Kair communicated with Yu Yi over a distance through the restriction in her body. Yu Ye's answer to Kair was very simple. Take her hostage. At the moment when Long Houchen and a Bao's final collision ended, Kair went into stealth mode. At that time, she had two choices: attack a Bao or take Yu Yi hostage. In the end, Kair chose the latter to be safe. After all, the last time they attacked a Bao escaped using a method that they couldn't stop. If the same thing happened again this time, they would definitely be torn to pieces by the remaining demon hunter removers. Taking Yu Yi hostage was the safest way. The reason why Long Houchen teleported Yu Yi away was for Yu Ye's safety. When Kair entered the awakening state, whoever touched her would probably be killed by Kair's unstable killing intent. If Kair completed her awakening, no one knew what would happen to Long Houchen. Yu Ye's life would also be in danger. After working together several times, Long Houchen had some trust in Yu Yi. Yu Yi had helped them a lot, so of course, he couldn't just watch Yu Yi die. Therefore, he chose to teleport Yu Yi to the Tower of Eternity. As they trained on the second floor of the Tower of Eternity, Long Houchen could decide the specific location of the teleportation through the eternal melody. Without a doubt, he sent Yu Yi to the first floor of the Tower of Eternity. Wait with me. When my partner's backlash is over, I will naturally return Princess Yu Yi to you. Of course, the premise is that we leave safely. Long Houchen said this and sat cross-legged in front of Kair. At this time, he was really too weak. A Bao's terrifying fist intent was still wreaking havoc in his body. His weak spiritual apertures were almost torn apart by the fist intent. He couldn't hold on anymore. A Bao was stunned. He obviously didn't expect this result. When Yu Yi was teleported away by Long Houchen, it was like his heart had been dug out. He really didn't dare to act rashly. He couldn't gamble with Yu Ye's life. Under the support of so many enemies, Long Houchen actually closed his eyes and took off his helmet. He then swallowed the elixirs one by one. These were all healing elixirs made by Lin Xian. A Bao's attention to Yu Yi gave them a chance to escape. However, the crisis wasn't over yet. Long Houchen was very clear that the moment Kair awakened would be the moment they faced their biggest test. He didn't know if they could leave this place alive, but no matter what, he definitely wouldn't leave Kair to escape alone. Who would have thought that the final outcome would be like this? The eyes of the demon hunter removers were all focused on a Bao. As long as a Bao gave the order, they would immediately launch an all-out attack. A Bao's clenched fists trembled slightly. This was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. If they missed it, they didn't know if they would ever be able to force Long Houchen into such a desperate situation in the future. One day, I will tear you into pieces. A Bao's voice was filled with hatred. However, he didn't give the order to attack. Just like Long Houchen, he sat down on the ground and closed his eyes to heal his injuries. Whether it was a Bao's demon hunter removers or Long Houchen, they didn't know that there was a pair of eyes watching them silently from 1,000 meters away. It was a person hidden in a gray cloak. A pair of bright eyes was quietly watching them. His gaze was constantly changing, as though he could actually hear everything that was happening on the battlefield. This person was empty-handed and didn't have any weapons. When Long Houchen sat down calmly and closed his eyes to heal his injuries, a trace of surprise flashed across his eyes. There was also a tinge of admiration and a tinge of pain and complexity in his eyes. He took a step forward, and the ground beneath his feet sank silently. However, his footsteps stopped in the next moment and he didn't continue forward. He narrowed his eyes, and a sharp murderous intent flashed across his eyes. Within a 3-meter radius around his body, a series of concentrated chi-chi sounds were heard. It was the sound of countless ice shards falling to the ground. These ice shards were formed by his tangible murderous intent. Most cultivators needed an absolutely quiet environment to cultivate. If the outside world was very chaotic, it would be difficult to calm down. Even if they were to enter a meditative state, they might fall into the danger of chi deviation if they were disturbed. Not to mention that they were under the immense pressure of being surrounded by enemies. However, Long Houchen just sat there cross-legged and instantly entered a meditative state under the watchful eyes of many demons. The powerful self-healing ability of the Mithril Foundation battle armor and the enhancement of the user's body were immediately revealed. The wrinkled lines on the armor gradually recovered, and a faint golden color appeared. It seemed that with every breath that Long Houchen took, the golden light on his body would become stronger. Traces of black gas were also forced out of his body. They were all the fist intent that a Bao had used to attack his body. A Bao's situation was similar to his, but he was expelling the sword intent that Long Houchen had left in his body. Although Long Houchen's external spiritual power was not as good as a Bao's, his internal spiritual power was purer. Therefore, his healing speed was not slower than a Bao's, not to mention that he had also taken the elixir refined by Lin Xen. However, his injuries were much more serious than A Bao's. Before, he had been forcibly supporting himself, and all of his internal organs had suffered varying degrees of injuries. His meridians were disordered, and his spiritual power was nearly exhausted. He had even hurt the origin of his spiritual orifices. Such serious injuries could not be recovered in a short time. If he was in a safe place, with such serious injuries, Long Houchen might have already fallen into a coma. But how could he let himself fall into a coma now? His strong willpower supported his body, and with the support of this willpower, Long Houchen was surprised to find that there seemed to be a strange golden light spot on his lower abdomen and between his eyebrows. As he absorbed the light elements from the outside world to replenish himself, these two spots of light seemed to grow as he breathed. Although the rate of growth was very slow, it was still very clear under the probing of Long Houchen's powerful spiritual power. This is the embryonic form of spiritual orifices? As early as a few days ago, Long Houchen's internal spiritual power had already increased to 10,000. Coupled with the foundation that he had been suppressing his spiritual power to increase, it was all stimulated in the arduous battle just now. And the most important thing was his amazing willpower. If he had fallen into a coma at that time, this breakthrough would probably have been delayed for a long time. But this time, he forcefully endured it and cultivated while surrounded by a group of powerful demons. This strong willpower merged with his stimulated potential and directly helped him to establish the embryonic form of spiritual orifices. Moreover, both spiritual orifices were established in an instant. In other words, as Long Houchen was given enough time to cultivate, he could truly enter the realm of rank 7. And in the future, his cultivation speed would be at least twice as fast as those rank 7 powerhouses who had only opened the second spiritual orifice. A large number of demon hunter-removers surrounded him, each of them staring at each other, but did not dare to make the slightest move. Without Abao's orders, they did not dare to act rashly. Moreover, the powerful strength displayed by Long Houchen and Kai Er made them hesitate to take action. If this was in the Temple League, and the situation was reversed, perhaps the powerhouses of the Temple League would have taken the risk to kill Abao for the future of the Alliance, and at the cost of severe punishment, they would have dealt with the powerful enemies that the Alliance might encounter in the future. But this was definitely not the case with the demons. The demons valued benefits above all else, and strength above all else. There was no spirit of dedication in their hearts, only absolute benefits. What good would killing Long Houchen and Kair do to them? The outcome would be certain death. The wrath of the demons' crown prince was not so easy to bear, and it might even implicate their race. Therefore, they could only wait here. 4 hours passed quickly. Long Houchen finally forced out all the fist intent in his body. Although his body was still weak, there was no more fist intent raging in his body. The next step was the process of treatment and recovery. Moreover, he also found that his judgment was correct. The spiritual orifices between his eyebrows and his lower abdomen had absorbed a certain amount of spiritual power in these 4 hours. Although it was still very little, the appearance of the spiritual orifices was gradually showing. As long as he cultivated for a long time, when the spiritual orifices in his chest were full, he would naturally be able to store the excess spiritual power in these 2 spiritual orifices. Once these 2 spiritual orifices were cultivated, then in the future, whether it was cultivation, attack, or defense, the output of spiritual power could be increased by 3 times. This was the advantage of the 7th Order over the 6th Order, not to mention that the body of light could be activated at the 7th Order as a powerful enhancement skill. Abao's body exuded a faint purple-black halo. His injuries healed faster than Long Houchen's. On his body there was also a surprise. The bottleneck between the 8th Order and the 9th Order seemed to have loosened. Although it had not really been opened, as long as there was a slight loosening, it would not take long for him to truly become a 9th Order powerhouse. As the inheritor of the Demon Emperor's bloodline, he was different from the ordinary heaven-defying Demon Dragon clan. After he was born, he only had very low strength, just like a human. After that, he had to cultivate his abilities step by step. It was also because of this that his talent was far superior to that of his clansmen. In the future, it was possible for him to become a super powerhouse like the Demon Emperor. As for the ordinary heaven-defying Demon Dragon clan, after breaking through to the 9th Order, the growth of their strength would be greatly slowed down. Without special encounters, it would be difficult to have a significant increase. Finally, there was some good news, and the gloominess in Abao's heart was slightly alleviated. As long as he could break through to the 9th Order, then his position as the heir should be stable, and he could truly start to borrow the power of the first demon god pillar. At that time, his strength would have earth-shattering changes, and it would be enough to crush Long Houchen. Abao could not help but sigh in his heart. If he could always have an opponent like Long Houchen to spur him on, then his future achievements might really surpass his father. But for the sake of the demon's rule, as long as there was a chance, he would definitely kill Long Houchen immediately, and not leave behind any future troubles for himself. Just as Abao was feeling the cracks in his 9th Order bottleneck, suddenly, his heart contracted. A seemingly tangible murderous intent stimulated him, and he almost instantly ended his cultivation and opened his eyes. Long Houchen also did the same. When both of them opened their eyes at the same time, one could see a pair of red eyes and a pair of golden eyes shining at the same time. They even looked at each other, and the next moment, their gazes fell on Kair. Kair had indeed changed. Her movements were still the same as before, but at this time, her body was covered in a layer of gray light, and her fair skin seemed to have turned into gray crystals. She stood there like a statue. However, Long Houchen and Abao's expressions changed. because they were shocked to find that the layer of gray crystals on Kyr's body was actually a tangible murderous intent. That's right, the murderous intent had truly materialized. How is this possible? Abao was dumbfounded. It was also at this moment that a monstrous murderous intent suddenly soared into the sky. The thick gray turned into a huge sword that tore through the air. Amidst the ear-piercing tearing sound, a black galaxy appeared in midair. And the length of the galaxy was extending into the sky at an alarming speed. A murderous intent that tore through space. The huge suction force and terrifying murderous intent caused the demon purgers to retreat in panic. Even the Eighth Order demon purgers were no exception. In the black galaxy, a gray light quietly descended and hovered above Kyr's head. It turned into circles of gray ripples that enveloped Kyr's body. On Kyr's forehead, a gray scythe rune gradually appeared. At the same time, the black dagger flickering with gray light left his hand and floated to her back. A gray bolt of lightning suddenly shot out from the river of stars, accurately bombarding that dagger. Immediately, Kyr's body trembled violently, while that black dagger suddenly turned gray. Moreover, under the injection of the dense gray light, it gradually became bigger and distorted. It turned into a huge gray scythe filled with deathly stillness. This scythe was really too big. Just the hilt alone was more than 3 meters long, and the foot-wide blade was more than 2 meters long. On the blade, the gray crystals emitted a gentle halo that rippled like water. The gray light flickered, and the sharpness caused a large amount of black gales to appear around it. One could imagine how terrifying and bloody a scene such a murderous weapon would create if it simply swept across the battlefield. Awakening. Abao finally came to a realization. What spiritual stove backlash? It was clearly Long Houchen's excuse. His powerful female companion was actually undergoing an awakening at this time, and it should be the awakening of a favored one. At this moment, Abao showed his decisiveness as the Prince of Demons. The interests of the demons completely prevailed, and his personal feelings were completely suppressed. He shouted angrily, "Kill them!" A favored one, Long Houchen, was already the future enemy of the demons. Once another favored one appeared beside him, then they might even become the existence that would overthrow the rule of the demons in the future. What was personal feelings compared to the survival of the race? Abao decisively gave the order to destroy immediately. At the same time as Abao gave the order, Long Houchen naturally would not sit still and wait for death. After a few hours of recovery, his cultivation had only recovered about 30%. However, he had been preparing for this moment. He did not expect Kyr's awakening process to be so fast, much faster than his. This was actually normal. The reason why Kyr's awakening process was smoother than Long Houchen's was because of her relationship with the Sword of Samsara. It could be said that Kyr's reincarnation Saintess constitution itself was brought about by the Sword of Samsara. The Sword of Samsara came with the inheritance of death. However, Long Houchen was different. His favored one constitution was completely obtained through his own efforts. The entire awakening process had to rely on his own understanding. Although the Sword of Samsara was overbearing, and the backlash was extremely strong. However, it played a role as a bridge in the process of Kyr's awakening. Under such circumstances, Kyr's awakening speed was naturally much faster. In just 6 hours, her understanding had been completed. At this time, she was receiving the gift of death's inheritance. 2 rays of light gushed out from Long Houchen's chest at the same time. One was red and the other was blue. At the same time, he quickly put on his helmet. These 2 huge bodies brazenly stood in front of Abao. A circle of extremely cold airflow suddenly burst out from the blue figure, turning into a circle of strong resistance ice ring. Moreover, it was not just one resistance ice ring, but 3 in a row. The second one caught up with the first one, and the third one caught up with the second one. The 3 resistance ice rings combined into one, erupting with a powerful collision force. Everything happened very suddenly. The fastest to react were Abao and Long Houchen, but both of them were seriously injured. Because Abao's injury was slightly lighter than Long Houchen's, he recovered a little faster. However, he had only recovered 50% of his strength. At this time, such a strong resistance ice ring suddenly appeared, immediately pushing all the surrounding demons, including Abao, several meters away. At this time, a strong purple light burst out from Long Houchen's forehead, and a huge figure brazenly appeared in front of Long Houchen. Its huge body was more than 10 meters long. Its 4 heads were raised high, and its 8 eyes were emitting a noble purple light. 2 rays of purple light fell on Long Houchen and Cairo at the same time, while the other 2 rays of purple light fell on the red and blue figures. Immediately after, a terrifying scene appeared. An extremely distorted and tyrannical special energy wave burst out from the huge figure, instantly covering a diameter of 100 meters. Almost every demon screamed at the same time, including the Prince of Demons, Abao. It was a painful feeling as if his body was about to be torn apart. The mana in his body seemed to have completely gone berserk, and even the various elements around him were fluctuating wildly. The 8th-tier devilish beings fared slightly better, and they only hurriedly unleashed their spiritual power to protect their bodies amid the excruciating pain. However, the weaker 7th-tier devilish beings had their flesh lacerated, and even though they hadn't been directly killed by the twisting chaotic elements, they were still suffering immense pain. Haoyue had arrived. Long Houchen's good brother and companion had finally appeared on the battlefield at this time. Why didn't Long Houchen ask Haoyue for help when facing Abao previously? It was because he wanted Haoyue's strength to adapt to the situation. Perhaps he and Haoyue could make Abao's injuries more severe if they joined forces, but Long Houchen was very clear that he still couldn't kill Abao. Since that was the case, why didn't he leave Haoyue's strength behind? Taking a step back, as long as Haoyue's strength was still there, he would be able to leave the battlefield alive. Chaos Elemental Stripping appeared on the battlefield once again. However, unlike before, Haoyue no longer had 3 heads, but 4. With the addition of Water Head Lil Blue, the Chaos Elemental Stripping from 3 types of elements became 4. This wasn't as simple as addition, but an increase in levels. It was a powerful rank 7 hybrid spell. Haoyue had already prepared the spell and was waiting for Long Houchen's teleportation. Hence, the moment it appeared, the spell was instantly cast. As the demon hunter removers were very close, the moment the spell was cast, all the demon hunter removers were hit. If Long Houchen had enough manpower, it would be a good opportunity to wipe out a large number of enemies. Unfortunately, Long Houchen could only rely on himself now. He looked at Kai-Er worriedly. Kai-Er was still in the final stages of the awakening of the gods favored. The dense gray light was slowly seeping into her body. The huge gray scythe slowly floated from her back to her front and was held in her right hand. Kai-Er's light purple hair also gradually turned into a crystal-like gray, sparkling and translucent, making it look exceptionally strange. His cultivation had recovered by 30%, which was enough for Long Houchen to activate the eternal melody to teleport himself and Kai-Er away. However, Kai-Er's awakening process hadn't ended yet. If he and Kai-Er were to be teleported away at this time, Long Houchen wouldn't be able to predict the consequences. He didn't want even the slightest injury to appear on Kai-Er's body. Therefore, after Haoyue released the Chaos Element Stripping, Long Houchen, who originally had the chance to teleport himself and Kai-Er away, did not do so. Instead, he held his swords and guarded Kai-Er. Haoyue didn't immediately enter a weakened state like when he used Chaos Elemental Stripping in the past. Instead, he raised his 4 heads, twisted his huge body, and swept his thick, long tail. Even the powerhouses of the level 8 demons were in a weakened state due to the Chaos Element Stripping. With a sweep of Haoyue's thick tail, 7 to 8 demons were sent flying. How could number 12 and number 11 let go of such a good opportunity? A red figure darted out quietly. With a flash of red light, a huge bone blade swept past smoothly. 2 level 7 demons were instantly cleaved in half by the chaos element stripping. The blue figure pointed the staff in his hand, and 6 fist-sized dark blue balls of ice flew out in all directions. Violent explosions rang out from 6 different directions, and the terrifying explosions sent a large number of demons flying. Number 12 and number 11 Holy Guard were nurtured in Long Houchen's eternal melody, and their cultivation base would increase along with Long Houchen's. Number 11 Holy Guard was a level 7 Ice-type wizard, while number 12 Holy Guard had reached the level 7 level along with Long Houchen. They didn't have powerful equipment, but they had battle techniques from ancient times. The 2 Holy Guards unleashed their power at the same time, and most of the demons were blown away by the chaos element stripping. However, there were 6 teams of demon hunters surrounding Long Houchen and the rest, including a Bao. There were a total of 6 level 8 powerhouses. Due to the difference in their ranks, they were less affected by the chaos element stripping. After a short moment of panic, the 6 level 8 powerhouses took the lead and rushed forward. A Bao's figure was blocked by number 11 Holy Guard. His fiery red bone blade was like flowing water, and he was always able to find a weak point on a Bao's body. However, number 11 Holy Guard was not Long Houchen. Although his attacks were strong, and he used the Shura slash to the extreme, he did not have the powerful sword will and light elemental spiritual energy like Long Houchen. A Bao did not even try to dodge number 11 Holy Guard's attack. He allowed the bone blade to slash his body, and punched out with his terrifying fist. Although number 11 Holy Guard dodged his attack, he could not stop a Bao from charging at Long Houchen. Boom! The combined force of the 2 level 8 demons sent number 11 Holy Guard flying. No matter how strong one's technique was, it was futile in the face of absolute spiritual suppression. At this time, only Haoyue was left standing in front of Long Houchen and Kair. Haoyue did not use any magic. He maintained the chaos element stripping, weakening all the demons. Now, he could only use his physical strength. This was the first time Haoyue displayed his full strength in close combat. The first person he faced was a Bao. He raised his upper body slightly and clawed at a Bao. Pa let out an angry roar. His body flashed, and he showed his true form of a devil dragon. He violently and directly collided with Haoyue's attack. Under the violent collision, Haoyue's huge body swayed slightly, and he was knocked to the side by a Bao. However, a Bao who had already used his demon dragon true form was also knocked back by Haoyue's claw. Not only that, Haoyue still had the time to sweep his huge tail, and his 4 heads smashed in 4 different directions, forcibly blocking the attacks of the 4 level 8 demons. Although they were weakened by the chaos element stripping, these were still level 8 demons. Facing Haoyue's strong body, they were actually unable to break through at the first moment. However, Haoyue was ultimately unable to defend all directions. On the other side, another level 8 demons arrived in front of Long Houchen. The aria of the Goddess of Light followed a mysterious trajectory to meet the crimson heavy sword of the level 8 demon. Amidst the ear-piercing buzzing sound, Long Houchen's body shook violently, but he did not take a step back. At the same time, his sharp sword intent left a deep mark on the chest of the level 8 demon. The 11th and 12th Holy Guards had already returned to Long Houchen's side, protecting him from both sides, and exerted their full strength. However, at this moment, the power of Haoyue's chaos element stripping began to decline. The level 7 demons endured the pain and weakening of the chaos element stripping and surrounded him. With both swords flying, Long Houchen had already consumed the spiritual explosion pill and bloodthirst pill, and was squeezing out every ounce of his strength. However, he was ultimately a human and not a god. Facing the encirclement of so many demons, wounds began to appear on his, Haoyue, and the two holy guards. However, Long Haochen still wasn't willing to retreat. He was very clear that as long as he persisted for a moment longer, Kai Er's awakening would be a bit more complete. Until the very last moment, he wouldn't bring Kai Er away. Boom, boom, boom. Haoyue and Abao clashed for a few times, but Abao did not gain the upper hand at all. Haoyue's 4 heads were like 4 sledgehammers, brazenly taking on most of the enemy's attack. The bulge on the side of his neck was also faintly red, as though it could break through at any time. The battle became more and more intense. Long Haochen used all his strength to execute the Shura slash, and together with the aria of the Goddess of Light's sharp sword intent, he finally forced the level 8 demon to retreat. However, a level 7 demons took advantage of the situation to close in on him, and slashed at his waist with a black longsword. A fiery red figure suddenly appeared at Long Haochen's side, forcibly using his own body to block the long saber. 3 of his ribs were instantly broken, but the 12th Holy Guard only slightly bent over, and valiantly used his broken bones to forcibly clamp the opponent's longsword. The streak of red light slashed through the air, sending the 7th tier devilish being flying through the air. The same thing happened on the other side. When the 11th Holy Guard's magic finally failed to connect due to the number of powerful enemies, he used his own body to block a purplish-black light ball that was blasting towards Long Haochen. One of his arms and half of his shoulder were completely blown away. Haoyue's injuries were even more serious. He had relied on his own strength to block 5 level 8 demons, and his overall strength was only at the level 7 level. No matter how strong his body was, he was still a level 7. Many wounds had already begun to appear on its body. However, these wounds were also healing at an astonishing speed under the astonished gazes of the demons. Haoyue's attacks were still as crazy as ever. The only thing that changed was his gradually dimming eyes. However, the purple light on his body was becoming more and more intense. Boom! The 12th Holy Guard's red body was finally cut into pieces by the terrifying sword-light attack of the level 8 demon. He turned into a red light ball and flew back into the eternal melody of Long Haochen. On the other side, the 11th Holy Guard only lasted a second longer than him. The blue light ball shattered. He also turned into a light ball and returned to the eternal melody. As Long Haochen did not die, given enough time, he would eventually be able to recover. Having lost his 2 big helpers, it directly became Long Haochen facing the encirclement of the strong demons. At this moment, he was both physically and mentally exhausted. However, behind him, Kai Er was still absorbing the last of the gray gas. She had not completely awakened. Gritting his teeth, a golden light blossomed in Long Haochen's eyes. A resolute aura erupted from his body, and a strong dark golden flame rose. Just like when the heavenly crystal was forced into a desperate situation, at this moment, he also ignited his own fire of life. After all, Long Haochen was a god's favored, and the effect of his fire of life was much more tyrannical than the heavenly crystal. The shadow of the Goddess of Light that had appeared before appeared again. The 2 swords each carried a mysterious sword intent, and forcibly cut 2 level 7 demons away. As he spun, he burst out with the azure stab of the twin swords, brazenly exploding the crimson sword light of the level 8 demons, and forcing them to retreat 5 steps. Chapter 142. A black spear silently streaked across the sky. It did not attack Long Haochen, but flew directly towards Kai Er, who was at the last moment of her awakening. The golden spiritual wings stretched out and struck the spear with all their might. The spear was forcefully flung away, but the golden spiritual wings could not bear the burden, and a long gash was torn open. Puff! A long saber fiercely slashed the mithril foundation battle armor's shoulder. The armor dented, and the bones in Long Haochen's shoulder suddenly cracked. His entire left arm went limp. Bang! He raised his knee and collided with a giant all that was attacking Kaire's lower abdomen. The Mithril Foundation battle armor was not omnipotent. It could be clearly seen that Long Houchen's left calf was twisted backward. It was obviously broken, but even so, the look in his eyes did not change at all. He suddenly moved to the side. With his right hand that could still move, he grabbed Kaire's waist and used his broad back to block the bombardment of a purple ball of light. Amidst the terrifying roar, Long Houchen was still able to resist and did not let his body crush Kaire. However, a mouthful of blood inevitably sprayed on the helmet of the Mithril Foundation battle armor. This was because every time he was attacked, a golden light would gush out of his chest to protect him. Otherwise, he would have been torn to pieces by these demons. Roar, a roar filled with anger, arrogance, unwillingness, and resentment suddenly resounded throughout the battlefield. A huge purple light suddenly erupted from Haoyue's body. Regardless of whether it was a Bao or the other demons, they all scattered like ghosts under the rippling purple light. A Bao's eyes showed obvious horror. Yes, yes. His voice actually trembled for the first time. After Haoyue's 4 big heads let out this roar, they all turned their heads to look at Long Houchen. Long Houchen's eyes met with it, and he finally activated the golden skull on his chest. The dense golden light enveloped him, Kaire and Haoyue. At this moment, the last ray of gray light finally fused into Kaire's body. Kaire's right hand firmly grasped the huge gray scythe. With a flash of golden light, the 2 people and the beast disappeared, leaving only the purple light and the Eternal Melody's teleportation halo in the air. Ran away? They ran away? A Bao roared at the sky. However, there was fear in his eyes. That's right, it was fear. This fear was clearly not caused by Long Houchen, but by the rippling purple aura at the end. 6 teams of demon hunter exterminators besieged 2 teams of monster hunters. In the end, they managed to escape unscathed, and Yu Yi was taken away. They even lost 8 demon hunter removers. In this battle, it could be said that a Bao and his team had suffered a huge loss. You guys stay behind and deal with the aftermath. A Bao roared in a low voice. The wings on his back flapped and he soared into the sky. Without healing his injuries, he flew directly in the direction of Demon City. The Tower of Eternity. Yu Yi stood there in a daze. When she was teleported here by Long Houchen, she fell into a state of fear. The dense aura of death filled the air. It was different from the darkness of destruction. Instead, it was an indescribable silence. It was as if death was coming at the next moment. She clearly remembered Long Houchen's instructions. Hence, after arriving here, she did not dare to move at all. She just stood there stiffly. Fortunately, the ice-cold murderous intent from Kaire, which almost froze her blood, gradually disappeared in this deathly stillness. Would they be able to come back alive? Yu Yi did not know how she should feel at this moment. For her, a Bao was willing to give up the opportunity to kill 2 teams of monster hunters. It was impossible to say that she was not touched. However, she did not want Long Houchen and Kaire to die. It was not only because of her own restriction. In the loneliness, time passed very slowly. Yu Yi was in a daze, not knowing what to do. Finally, after an unknown amount of time, a golden light suddenly flashed. Then, 1 big and 2 small, 3 figures suddenly appeared in front of her. Long Houchen appeared directly on the ground. Kaire was still standing upright. Haoyue's 4 big heads drooped down after returning here. He closed his eyes. His body was emitting a faint purple glow. Before falling asleep, Little Light raised its head with difficulty. It breathed a gentle golden light toward Long Houchen. It nourished his body. They came back. They came back alive. Yu Yi was immediately overjoyed. However, she was soon stunned by the tragic scene of Long Houchen. His left shoulder had completely caved in, and even his arm was hanging limply. His right leg was twisted in the opposite direction, and there was a huge hemispherical depression on the Mithril Foundation battle armor on his back. Only when the bones on his back were completely shattered would such a terrifying scene appear. Moreover, the current Long Houchen could not let her feel a trace of life. How could he suffer such a serious injury? Since he could teleport back here, how could this happen? Yu Yi looked at the unconscious Long Houchen on the ground. She did not know what to do. After being stunned for a long time, she gradually woke up. With a strong shock, she quickly came to Long Houchen's side and squatted down. She checked his condition. Long Houchen's whole body was covered in the Mithril Foundation battle armor. There was a faint smell of blood coming from his body. The design of the Mithril Foundation battle armor was precise and seamless. Yu Yi searched for a long time before she found the mechanism to open the armor under her armpits. She carefully opened the Mithril Foundation battle armor bit by bit. With a flash of silver light, the Mithril Foundation battle armor that separated from Long Houchen's body quickly condensed into the shape of a silver box. It emitted a gentle fluctuation of light elements. It was obvious that it was repairing itself. When Yu Yi saw Long Houchen's appearance inside the armor, she couldn't help but suck in a breath of cold air. At this moment, Long Houchen looked too tragic. There was a deep dent on his left shoulder. His skin was torn and his flesh was torn. Even his bones were flipped out. His body was already dyed red with blood. His right leg was twisted strangely. His entire back had collapsed. Blood continuously flowed out of his mouth, nose, and ears. His handsome face was snow-white. With such a serious injury, even a powerful priest would be helpless here. The three most serious injuries were comminuted fractures. His bones were broken into countless pieces. Moreover, he was constantly losing blood. Yu Yi carefully checked Long Houchen's breathing and heartbeat. His breathing was almost inaudible, but there was still a weak heartbeat. On his chest, the golden skull pendant emitted a soft halo. It seemed to protect his internal organs, which saved his life. However, he was so seriously injured that Yu Yi didn't know how to treat him, especially the injuries on the bones. If it wasn't good, it could lead to a lifelong disability. Kai was still standing at the side, maintaining her original posture. However, the murderous aura on her body was fluctuating unstably. Her body was also trembling slightly. At the last moment of awakening, although she had already absorbed all the inheritance, she still hadn't completed the integration and forcefully entered the teleportation process. Her spiritual power was in a state of disorder. What should I do? What should I do? Yu Yi looked at Long Houchen anxiously. She was as anxious as an ant on a hot pan. She was of the dark attribute, so she didn't dare to help Long Houchen treat him. Otherwise, it would only have the opposite effect. In the battle with a bow, it looked like Long Houchen didn't lose, but in reality, he was still not a match for a bow. The difference in spiritual energy between the two was too great, and a bow even possessed the inheritance of the heaven-defying Devil-Dragon clan. Before the battle started, Long Houchen had secretly taken a pill called the Spirit-Burning Pill that Lin Xin had successfully refined, squeezing out his own potential. This kind of spirit-burning pill didn't increase one's strength as rapidly as the Spirit Explosion Pill, but the duration of the increase was very long. The effect of the increase was also quite strong, but it also had a stronger side effect. If too much potential was squeezed out, then it would even cause permanent damage. In order to let his companions leave alive, Long Houchen had done everything he could. Although he had successfully broken through to the Seventh Order, the excessive overdraft had also put him in an extremely dangerous situation. At the last moment, in order to protect Kai and give her as much time as possible to awaken, Long Houchen didn't hesitate to use his body as a shield for Kai. Otherwise, if Kai couldn't even fully absorb the power of the inheritance, then it was very likely that her life would be in danger immediately. Although Long Houchen was currently in a state of near death, there was a faint smile at the corner of his mouth. In the past, He had told his father that the reason he wanted to become a guardian knight was because he hoped to be able to protect the people he wanted to protect. And today, he had really done it. For Kai-Er, he had almost sacrificed his own life. If it wasn't for Hao Yue's desperate gaze at the last moment, and Long Haochen was concerned about its safety, he might even have persevered a little longer. A favored was still a human, and they would still die if they received a fatal injury. Although Long Haochen had the eternal melody to protect him, the Mithril Foundation armor to protect him, and his companions to share the damage, his life force was still rapidly depleting. The serious injuries from both the inside and the outside were robbing him of his life force. The burning flame of life was also gradually extinguishing, and even his powerful soul fire was slowly dispersing. Just when Yu Yi didn't know what to do and wanted to help Long Haochen bandage his injuries, a somewhat resentful voice suddenly sounded. I really didn't want to come to this filthy place that's filled with the aura of death. What the hell are you doing? Why are you like this? Then, under the astonished gaze of Yu Yi, a faint green light gushed out from Long Haochen's lower abdomen. It was a green light that was filled with the aura of life. The green light floated in the air and gradually formed a green door of light. A slender, white, and tender little foot stepped out of the door of light. The green light rippled, and the white and tender little foot landed on the ground. A fair and delicate little girl appeared in front of the door of light. Her light blue long hair was combed into two small braids that swayed on both sides of her head. Her tender little face had a little baby fat on it. Even though she was frowning, she still looked so cute. It's you! Yu Yi exclaimed. Of course, she knew who this little girl was. Back then, she and a group of demon gods' heirs suffered a great loss at the hands of this little girl under the leadership of a Bao. Later, she also vaguely knew that this little girl was not only a Bao's target, but also the demon emperor's. But a Bao did not tell her the secret. Yi Xiaolei raised her hand and fanned it in front of her nose. Annoying dark aura, stay away from me. Although you're his person, I still don't like you. As she said that, she ignored Yu Yi and squatted down beside Long Haochen. Looking at Long Haochen's current situation, Yi Xiaolei's frown deepened. Although the benefits of being the child of light are obvious, the disadvantages are equally obvious. You have nothing better to do than to make me come to this annoying place. It's really annoying. Although she said that, her hands were already moving. Her small hands gently pressed on Long Haochen's chest, and a soft green halo suddenly emitted from her palms. In just a few breaths' time, Long Haochen's whole body was filled with a light green aura full of life. Yi Xiaolei's small 10 fingers moved gently. After thinking for a moment, she carefully turned Long Haochen's body over with his back facing up. When her hands gently pressed on Long Haochen's collapsed back, her expression had become focused. The thick green light spread, and the strong life aura seemed incompatible with the death aura in the Tower of Eternity. But the strong death aura in the Tower of Eternity was dispersed to a certain range under the release of the life aura. Yi Xiaolei was kneeling on the ground. At this time, her round little buttocks slowly raised, her back slightly arched, and her palms slowly made an upward movement. Suddenly, it could be clearly seen that Long Haochen's collapsed back actually bulged again, and the thick green light continued to pour into his body. The whole process was very slow but very effective. Soon, Long Haochen's back gradually returned to a normal position. Yi Xiaolei raised her hands again, and a wisp of green light rippled on her fingertips, like a needle threading, and constantly pointed into Long Haochen's body. There was a faint sound of bones touching in Long Haochen's body. Every time her fingers fell on Long Haochen's body, his body would tremble slightly. Her movements became more and more beautiful, as if she was weaving a dress with green silk thread. The green light was shining, and Yu Yi was dazzled. After nearly a quarter of an hour, Yi Xiaolei's movements gradually slowed down, and finally, her palms gently fell on Long Haochen's back, as if she was massaging his back for a while. Then, she let out a long sigh, and turned his body upside down again. Yu Yi had been carefully observing Long Haochen's condition. After Yi Xiaolei's treatment, Long Haochen's chest had begun to rise and fall obviously, and it was obvious that his life was no longer in danger. This made her secretly heave a sigh of relief. As Long Haochen was saved by Yi Xiaolei, Yu Ye's thoughts also began to work. Since Long Haochen had suffered such a serious injury, it could only mean one thing: a Bao had attacked him. However, she was still in Long Haochen's hands. How could a Bao be sure that he could save her? Yu Yi had always been exceptionally intelligent. At this moment, she had already realized something, and a trace of bitterness appeared in her heart. She did not want to continue thinking about it, but the answer had already appeared clearly in her heart. Yi Xiaolei's treatment continued. After treating the fatal injury on Long Haochen's back, her second target was his shoulder. This time, because it was an external injury, Yu Yi could clearly see that under the rhythmic movements of Yi Xiaolei's 10 fingers, the green light threads were connected to Long Haochen's broken bones, muscles, and meridians. It was as if she was creating a work of art, slowly piecing his bones, muscles, and meridians together. The soft green light was the best adhesive. In just a short while, the wound had already closed and returned to its original state. Not even a scar was left. After the shoulder, it was the leg. When Long Haochen's right leg was also healed, Yi Xiaolei massaged his whole body. From the beginning to the end, what Yu Yi felt the most was the rich life force continuously pouring into Long Haochen's body, stimulating his own potential, and at the same time replenishing the life force that he had consumed. Although Yu Yi did not know much about human priests, she was completely sure that even the most powerful human priest could not cure Long Haochen's injury in such a short time. Moreover, it seemed that there would not be any residual effects. This kind of healing ability that originated from the life force of nature was definitely unique. It was probably the only one. What exactly happened in the fantasy paradise? How could she actually tear through space and come to Long Haochen's side? Just as Yu Yi was secretly shocked, the somewhat tired Yi Xiaolei raised her right hand and pointed a finger at the center of Long Haochen's eyebrows. "Hey, it's time to wake up. I'm so tired." A light groan came out of Long Haochen's mouth. After his body slightly trembled a few times, his eyes slowly opened. When he regained consciousness, Long Haochen only felt that his whole body was comfortably warm and indescribably restrained, but he could not use any strength at all. A little pink face with a bit of tiredness appeared in front of him, and a chubby little hand waved in front of his eyes. "Hey, you're not stupid, are you? I spent so much effort. If you're stupid, then I'll lose big." "It's you? Why are you here? You saved me?" Long Haochen stared blankly at Yi Xiaolei, and his thoughts gradually recovered. He struggled to sit up, but he could not use any strength at all. "Of course I saved you. Who else but me would be so good? Hey, don't move. Your injuries are too serious, and you need to lie down for at least 24 hours to not have any sequelae. You're really stupid. You'd rather die than return to this hateful place immediately. However, your stupidity is a bit cute. Where's Kai? Long Haochen asked impatiently. Yi Xiaolei had a speechless look on her face as she said, "You're not even thanking me first for saving your life. Are you really stupid?" "Thank you, Kai." Yi Xiaolei looked like she was defeated by him. She moved sideways and pointed behind her. "Isn't that over there?" Long Haochen looked in the direction of her finger, and sure enough, Kai was standing there quietly. However, it was also at this moment that Kai body moved slightly. Her originally dull eyes regained their vigor. "Kai Long Haochen called out softly. Yi Xiaolei naturally noticed the change in Kai. She's awake too." Kai's stiff body gradually relaxed, but her eyes that regained their vigor were filled with confusion. She looked at Long Haochen, who was lying on the ground, and then looked at Yi Xiaolei and Yu Yi beside him. Suddenly, a cold aura was released from her body. "Be careful!" Yi Xiaolei cried out and suddenly pounced on Long Haochen, hugging his body and rolling to the side. The next moment, a gray light flashed, and with a soft thud, the huge scythe cut into the ground. It was like cutting tofu. Yi Xiaolei's body was so petite, and the way she rolled out while hugging Long Haochen was really funny. However, none of them could laugh now. Stop, are you crazy? Yi Xiaolei raised her hand, and a layer of dark green barrier appeared in front of Kai Er, pushing her body back a few meters. However, the terrifying huge scythe in Kai Er's hand only flashed a few times, and the dark green barrier shattered and disappeared. The cold voice was full of murderous intent. Who are you? Kai Er's sudden attack also shocked Yu Yi, and she quickly ran to the side. Yi Xiaolei said angrily, "Are you crazy? You don't even know him?" Kai Er was stunned, looked at Long Haochen, and shook her head gently. "Of course I don't know him. Who am I?" The confusion in her eyes grew, but fortunately, the murderous intent on her body weakened a little. Yi Xiaolei said angrily, "He's your man, he sacrificed so much for you, and even almost lost his life, and you say you don't know him? Do you have any humanity?" Kai Er's eyes became even more lifeless. She looked down at herself, the huge scythe in her hand, and the three people in front of her. "But I really don't know who I am. You're lying to me, right? Those who lie to me must die." As she said that, she raised the scythe in her hand again. Kai Er, what's wrong?" Long Haochen shouted anxiously. His eyes were full of anxiety. When Kai Er's eyes met his, the scythe in Kai Er's hand paused, and in the end, she did not wave it again. I really think I know you. You shouldn't be a bad person." Kai Er's cold voice softened a little, and she looked at Long Haochen's eyes, as if she wanted to remember something, but she quickly covered her head with both hands and let out a painful moan. Even the huge scythe in her hand disappeared in the next instant. "Kai Er, what's wrong?" Long Haochen never thought that Kai Er would change like this after she woke up. She didn't recognize him, and seemed to have forgotten who she was. Yi Xiaolei was also stunned and murmured, "Could it be playing amnesia? What's wrong with her?" After a full 15 minutes, Kai Er gradually calmed down, and when she looked at Long Haochen again, there was a trace of panic that made Long Haochen's heart ache. Who am I? Who are you? Why can't I remember anything?" The corner of Yi Xiaolei's mouth twitched. "Look at this. He did so much for you, and you actually forgot him?" As she said that, she raised her hand, and a dark green light screen appeared in front of Kai. The center of the light screen was slightly distorted, and gradually showed a scene of light and shadow. The light screen was about 1 meter in diameter, and a clear image gradually appeared in the center. In that image, Long Haochen and Kai Er clearly appeared in the center of the image, and it was the scene where they were surrounded by the demons. In the image, every movement of Long Haochen was so simple, direct, and without hesitation. He used his body to block in front of Kai Er again and again when he was powerless. Even just looking at this image, one could clearly feel that Long Haochen's constantly broken body was rapidly losing vitality. However, Kai Er, who was protected by him in the center, was not injured at all. Under the siege of so many strong demons, only Long Haochen was injured. The light and shadow changed very quickly, but it was this short video recording that was full of shock. Kai Er's eyes were still blank, but there was less coldness and fear than before. She muttered to herself, That's me? That's me? Who am I?" There was another person who was more shocked than her, and that was Yu Yi. Looking at the tragic scene in the image, she finally understood how the young knight came to be covered in cuts and bruises. He was completely protecting her. Not only to protect her life, but also to protect her from the strange enlightenment process. For this, he did not hesitate to burn his own life. If it wasn't for Yi Xiaolei's timely arrival, perhaps he would have lost a layer of his skin even if he did not die this time. He might even have been crippled for life. For a man to go this far for a woman, there was no need for anything else to prove anything. On the contrary, she also saw a Bao in the image, and a Bao was attacking with all his might, trying to kill all of them. Yu Yi really wanted to ask what a Bao was thinking when he attacked Long Haochen and the rest. Her face was a little pale, and there was a tinge of coldness in her grief. When she glanced at Kai, there was a trace of sincere envy and even jealousy in her eyes. If I had known him earlier, I would have captured his heart no matter what it took. But now, looking at his distressed eyes, which only belonged to her, Yi did not even have the courage to fight for anything. The light and shadow faded, and Kai was still standing there, repeating those simple words. Her eyes were also becoming more and more panicked. Long Houchen could not move at all now. Otherwise, he would have rushed forward to hug her at all costs and comfort her frightened heart. Even if her huge scythe cut into his body, it would still be the same. Yi Xiaolei jumped up. Hey, do you understand? He is your man. If you don't want him, there will definitely be a lot of girls who will fight for him. Kai, however, didn't pay any attention to her. She just stood there blankly, mumbling those few words. Xiaolei, what happened to Kai? Long Houchen asked anxiously. Yi Xiaolei turned back to look at him and smiled bitterly. I also don't know. When she awakened as a god's favored, she must have experienced the process of spiritual awakening. Although she has completely absorbed the power of the awakening, there should be a problem with the process of spiritual awakening. It probably stimulated her brain and caused her to temporarily lose her memory. Then do you have any way to help her recover? Long Houchen hurriedly asked. Yi Xiaolei shrugged and said, I am not a god. Even if I am a god, I am not omnipotent. The human brain has an extremely precise structure, and everyone's spiritual world is different. I can heal your physical injuries, but the spiritual and brain injuries are related to the soul. Even a necromancer can't heal her unless she is killed and her soul is extracted. That way, the necromancer may have some way. Long Houchen asked blankly, Then Kai can't recover at all? Yi Xiaolei said, Of course not. There is no known magic that can erase a human's memory, unless the soul and life are erased at the same time. It can be seen that the human memory is deeply imprinted in the soul. So, her memory didn't disappear, but was blocked by the mutation of the spiritual power when the god of death awakened. Just like the bottleneck you encountered when you cultivate. As long as this barrier is broken, her memory will naturally be completely restored. The barrier you humans cultivate needs to rely on continuous enlightenment and cultivation to break through. But this barrier of hers needs you to be good to her and rely on you to awaken her memory. Only then will there be a possibility of breaking through the barrier. Tell her more about what happened between you two, especially the things that left a deep impression on her and touched her. Maybe it will be helpful. However, her condition is still quite serious, so don't be too hasty. Let her accept that you can be by her side first. Alright, I'll help you a bit more. Maybe she will feel better after she sleeps for a while. As she spoke, Yi Xiaolei blew lightly in the direction of Kai. A layer of faint dark green mist floated in the direction of Kai. Kai-er's frightened expression gradually calmed down, as if the smell of the dark green mist was very pleasant. After a few light breaths, her eyes gradually became hazy, and she slowly fell to the ground, falling asleep. Thank you, little Lei. I will remember the kindness of saving my life forever. Long Houchen said seriously. He knew how serious his injuries were. Yi Xiaolei must have spent a lot of effort to heal him. Although he wasn't a person who was good at praising others, this kindness would definitely be deeply engraved in his heart. Yi Xiaolei had already helped them more than once, and he clearly remembered the promise he made to Yi Xiaolei in the illusory paradise. Yi Xiaolei said unhappily, There's no need to thank me. This is our deal. However, you should be more careful in the future. If you suffer a fatal injury, I'm afraid that even I can't do anything. I have to leave now. The smell of death here is really too annoying. However, I have to say that this necromancer must have been terrifyingly strong when he was alive. Don't forget our promise. Long Houchen nodded and said, I will definitely do what I promised. No matter what, I still have to thank you. He no longer saw Yi Xiaolei as a little girl. Not only was this little girl from the illusory paradise smart, but she also had wisdom that even adults couldn't reach. Yi Xiaolei seemed to have suddenly thought of something and said seriously, "I'm very satisfied that your strength has increased very quickly. However, there is one thing you must remember. Although this necromancer is an extremely rare light attribute, his inheritance is definitely not suitable for you. This is because there is a huge amount of resentment in his power, and it is definitely not something you can withstand. Once you inherit his inheritance, it is very likely that you will be affected by the resentment and become another him in the near future. This is something you can't change. Therefore, you can train in this necromancer tower, but you must never take the last step. In other words, never try to climb up to the last floor of this tower." Long Haochen asked doubtfully, "Can't this resentment be resolved?" Yi Xiaolei shook her head and said, "At least you can't. You have the same attribute as him. Once you inherit his power, even the goddess of light won't be able to save you. His level of resentment has already penetrated deep into the soul. If you want to talk about expiation, it is more suitable for you, the girlfriend who has lost her memory. The most basic ability of the necromancer's power that she inherited is expiation. However, this necromancer has already chosen you and there is no way to change it. In any case, just listen to me and I won't harm you. Alright, I'm going now. Remember what I said." As she said that, Yi Xiaolei pointed at the void and the green light door appeared once again. She took a step out and shook the little braid on her head as she disappeared in the green light. Long Haochen looked at the green light that disappeared and a trace of gratitude flashed in his eyes. However, it was quickly replaced by worry. Kai Er's memory loss made his heart in a mess. Even Yi Xiaolei couldn't treat her. She might really have to rely on herself to recover. "Yu Yi, please help me sit properly," Long Haochen said to Yu Yi, who was not far away. Because he was worried about Kai Er, he didn't notice that there was something wrong with Yu Ye's emotions. When Yu Yi heard Long Haochen's voice, her body trembled slightly. She subconsciously went to his side and helped him to sit cross-legged. "Didn't that little girl ask you to have a good rest? What are you doing?" Yu Yi asked doubtfully. Long Haochen smiled bitterly. "Kai Er lost her memory and I have to recover as soon as possible. Otherwise, how can I take care of her? Don't worry, I'll bring you back and let you leave once my strength has recovered. However, I'm a little worried about the restriction that Kai Er planted in your body. I don't have a way to remove it. However, I will help her recover her memory as soon as possible and help you completely remove this restriction." Yu Yi shook her head. "There's no need for that. The restriction has already been removed. When you brought her back, I discovered that the restriction in my body had disappeared. This should have something to do with her own awakening. Long Haochen, when you first entered the demon's territory with my Yu Yi merchant group, you saved my life. However, in the past few years, I've also given you a lot of help. I believe it's enough to repay that kindness. From now on, we no longer have any relationship. Don't bother me in the future. With your current cultivation, you can still enter the demon's territory without the help of my merchant group." Yu Ye's voice became colder and colder. In the end, it was as if winter had arrived. Her voice was a portrayal of her mood at this time. Even she couldn't figure out why her mood was so bad. Her original intention wasn't like this. However, she said these heartless words subconsciously. Was it to escape? Or was it something else? Chapter 143. Long Haochen frowned slightly. After thinking for a moment, he said, "What if we buy intelligence from you in the future?" He really didn't want to force Yu Yi anymore. Since they became monster hunters, it could be said that Yu Yi was one of the biggest contributors to their success in the demon's territory. If they lost her intelligence, the general class monster hunt 64 wouldn't be as easy as it is now. Yu Ye's eyes flashed with sadness, and she thought to herself, it turns out that in his heart, I'm just a tool. Yes, I'm a demon's, and I'm the daughter of the moon demon. What else can he do besides using me? Sure, but the price of my intelligence isn't low, Yu Yi said coldly. Long Houchen nodded slightly and didn't say anything more. His mind was now on Kai Er, who had lost her memory. Yu Yi suddenly said, "Was it a Bao who ordered the attack?" A complicated look flashed in her eyes. Long Houchen nodded. Yu Yi said, "I want to know the details at that time. I'll give you a piece of information you're concerned about in exchange." Long Houchen finally noticed that Yu Ye's mood was a little off. "What's wrong with you? Are you feeling uncomfortable?" "It's none of your business." Yu Yi couldn't control her emotions, and her throat was a little choked. Long Houchen sighed softly and comforted her in a low voice. "Don't think too much. He's different from me. As the crown prince of the demons and the heir of the demon emperor, he has to think for the demons most of the time. At that time, the awakening of Kai Er's favored made him feel uneasy, so he ordered the attack on us." Yu Yi stared blankly at Long Houchen. "Are you defending your mortal enemy?" Long Houchen was also slightly taken aback. He shook his head with a bitter smile and said, "He is my sworn enemy, but you are my friend. I just want you to feel better, that's all. However, I'm ashamed that I've been threatening you with restrictions all this time. Now that the restriction has been lifted, at least there won't be any barriers between us anymore." "Do you really think of me as a friend?" Yu Yi stared into Long Houchen's eyes. Long Houchen nodded and said, "As long as you don't participate in killing humans, I'll treat you as a friend." The haze in her heart was suddenly swept away. Yu Ye's face once again revealed that sweet smile. "Okay, we are friends. I'll give you a discount on the information I sell to you in the future." Seeing that her mood had recovered a little, Long Houchen couldn't help but smile. "Are you going to break my left leg or my right leg?" Yu Yi giggled and said, "So you also have times when you're dishonest. Actually, you're really not a good person." Long Houchen was stunned. "What's not good about me?" Yu Yi snorted and said, "I'm not telling you. Hurry up and cultivate." Long Houchen smiled and closed his eyes. He sensed the condition of his body and began to cultivate in the most conservative way. Seeing his expression gradually become peaceful, Yu Ye's gaze became a little dazed. She said in her heart, "Your flaw is that you don't have any flaws. Otherwise, why would I be gradually influenced by you?" "What? Austin Griffin and Long Houchen are together? Or his mount?" The demon god emperor sat upright on his throne, and in front of him stood a pale Bao. Bang! The dragon head on the armrest of the throne was actually crushed by Demon Emperor's excessive strength. It burst into powder. Demon Emperor's breathing clearly became a little rapid, and his handsome face even became a little distorted. Dense murderous intent gushed out like a tide. Even with a tyrannical physique like a Bao couldn't withstand Demon Emperor's terrifying murderous intent. With a muffled groan, he took a few steps back and spat out a mouthful of blood. Only then did Demon Emperor realize that he had lost control of himself. He raised his hand and a purplish-black light entered a Bao's body. His complexion immediately looked much better. A Bao's shock at this moment was no less than his father's. This was the first time he saw his father lose control of himself like this. In fact, even he didn't know what kind of existence Austin Griffin was. It seemed that this secret could only be known by a real demon god. Demon Emperor walked down from the throne and strode back and forth in the wide hall. His pair of black eyes had unknowingly turned red, and his breathing was obviously much heavier than usual. The spiritual power in his body fluctuated unstably. That fluctuating expression was like a volcano that could erupt at any time. A Bao didn't dare to make a sound, nor did he dare to make any suggestions. In this state of Demon Emperor, even the top 10 demon gods wouldn't dare to breathe loudly in front of him. That domineering aura could even make the entire heart city of Demonic City tremble. After pacing for nearly an hour, Demon Emperor finally stopped and shouted in a deep voice, "Huang Shua, here." In the darkness, the tall Huang Shua quietly appeared and knelt on one knee. Demon Emperor said coldly, "Pass down my order. Summon Moon Demon Agars, Star Demon Sashak, Necromancer Demon God Samakina, and Hell Demon God Marbus to the Demon Palace for a discussion." "Yes, Your Majesty." Huang Shuo replied respectfully and immediately turned to leave. A Bao had already knelt on the ground because of his father's terrifying aura. His heart was filled with shock. It was extremely rare for Demon Emperor to summon the second, third, fourth, and fifth demons for a discussion. Although Austin Griffin's strength wasn't bad, was it worth it for his father to do this? However, he didn't dare to ask. The current Demon Emperor was really too terrifying. Long Haochen's cultivation was very difficult. Just as Yi Xiaolei said, his previous injuries were too heavy, even damaging his foundation. Although his injuries were healed by Yi Xiaolei's all-out treatment, it was impossible for his body to recover so quickly. He needed to rest for a period of time. But how could Long Haochen dare to give himself any time to rest? Kai Er was in such a big problem. He was full of self-blame. He had to use all his heart and soul to take care of Kai Er. The feeling of his whole body being limp couldn't be described as comfortable. Long Haochen could feel that there was spiritual power in his body, but it was completely dispersed in his limbs and bones. He could only gather this spiritual power bit by bit. It was unprecedentedly difficult. The key was that the strong feeling of weakness made it difficult for him to concentrate. However, Long Haochen was a god's chosen after all. His control over his attributes was far superior to other professions of the same level. After trying for a while and finding that it was difficult for him to gather spiritual power, he came up with an ingenious method. Instead of mobilizing the spiritual power, he stimulated it. He carefully stimulated every bit of the light elements in his body, so that the aura of the light elements could be emitted. In this way, the aura of the light elements could better fill his body. At first, the effect was not obvious. The light elements were stimulated by his spiritual power and only appeared slightly brighter than before. But as the light elements stimulated by Long Haochen became more and more, his body began to feel warm. His muscles, meridians, internal organs, and bones began to rejuvenate under the effect of this increasingly warm aura. This undoubtedly greatly accelerated his recovery. Long Haochen was very smart. His inadvertent discovery soon gave him some insight. Although this could not be regarded as magic, it could be regarded as a way of self-healing. It could greatly enhance the speed of one's own recovery and healing. Of course, this method was not suitable for everyone. To use it, there were two prerequisites. First, the spiritual power must be strong enough to be able to precisely control every subtle light element. Second, there was the problem of the attribute. If it was Lin Xian, when the fire elements were stimulated, wouldn't it cause self-harm? It seemed that only the light and water attributes were more suitable for this kind of self-healing method. As for the name, Long Haochen did not think too much about it. He just called it light healing. Under the effect of light healing, Long Haochen's body gradually emitted a golden halo. The accelerated recovery of his body undoubtedly increased the speed at which he absorbed the light element. According to Yi Xiaolei, Long Haochen's body would need 24 hours to recover his bodily functions. However, when he really practiced for 24 hours, not only did his bodily functions recover, but even his spiritual power had recovered by more than 70%. Through practice, Long Haochen discovered that when he absorbed the light elements to refine his spiritual power, the spiritual power first gathered at the spiritual aperture at his chest. The spiritual apertures between his eyebrows and his lower abdomen did not have any movements. It seemed that he had to wait until the spiritual aperture at his chest was full of spiritual power before the other two spiritual apertures could gather spiritual power. However, not being able to store it did not mean that it could not be absorbed and refined. The other two spiritual apertures were also doing the same work as the spiritual aperture at his chest during Long Haochen's practice. It was just that the speed at which they absorbed the light elements to refine spiritual power was much slower than the spiritual aperture at his chest. The specific operation of the spiritual apertures would have to be explored through continuous practice in the future. At this time, Long Houchen did not have that much time because Kaer had already woken up from her sleep. Although Long Houchen had been practicing, his heart was completely on Kaer. As soon as Kaer showed signs of waking up, he immediately woke up from his practice. Kaer! Long Houchen called out softly and quickly got up to her side. Kaer slowly opened her hazy eyes and looked at Long Houchen in a daze. She then looked around and suddenly grabbed Long Houchen's wrist and said, why can't I remember anything? Who am I? And where is this place?" Long Houchen said softly, "You are Kaer and I am Long Houchen. Because you received some stimulation when your ability was awakened, you temporarily lost your memory. Don't worry, everything will be fine. I will definitely help you recover your memory." Kaer shook her head with all her strength, her hands grasping her sparkling and translucent gray hair, her beautiful face filled with pain. I really can't remember anything. So sad, so sad." Long Houchen felt a sharp pain in his heart. He couldn't help but want to pull her into his embrace. Kaer was suddenly shocked and pushed him away. She crossed her arms in front of her chest and said, What are you doing?" Long Houchen hurriedly said, "Kaer, don't be afraid. I won't do anything. I will just accompany you, okay? Calm down first. The more anxious you are, the harder it will be to recover your memory. Are you willing to listen to me tell you about yourself?" Under Long Houchen's repeated comforting words, the fear in Kaer's eyes gradually calmed down. However, she still looked at Long Houchen with vigilance. "Don't come over. Just talk there." "Okay." Long Houchen agreed and said in the most gentle voice, "You are Kaer. You are an assassin from the Temple League's Temple of Assassins." "Temple League? What's that? What's the Assassin Temple?" Kaer looked at Long Houchen blankly. Long Houchen was also stunned. He didn't expect Kaer to lose her memory so thoroughly. "Kaer, sit down first. I will slowly tell you." Kaer's resistance seemed to weaken a little. She slowly sat down. However, as soon as she sat down, she frowned. "I'm hungry. I'm so hungry." Indeed, the three of them hadn't eaten for a day and a night. Long Houchen hurriedly took out food and water from the eternal melody and distributed it to the two women. He took care of Kaer while she ate. He even specially lit the flame of light to help her heat up the dry rations. He took care of her meticulously. Yi watched Long Houchen help Kaer prepare the dry rations while telling her about the situation of the Holy Demon Continent. She couldn't help but feel a little silly. She didn't know why, but her nose was a little sour and her beautiful eyes were faintly misty. "If one day there is a man who can do this for me, even if I have to die right now, I will be willing." Kaer's fear and rejection gradually disappeared with Long Houchen's care and explanation. Listening to everything Long Houchen said, her mind gradually calmed down. Like a thirsty desert traveler who suddenly saw an oasis, she carefully remembered everything Long Houchen said. At least, her mind was no longer blank. Every half an hour Long Houchen spoke, he would let Kaer rest for a while. He would let her absorb what he said before he continued. Just the background of the continent and the current situation of the continent. He spoke for nearly 2 hours. "The first time we met was when I was very young. At that time, you were much stronger than me. I was only 9 years old. I was picking wild vegetables to bring home to eat, but I suddenly saw you, who was only 7 or 8 years old, fall to the ground. Do you still remember how we looked when we reunited? At that time, I didn't recognize you, but you recognized me because of the forget-me-not ring. You didn't even tell me. You're really bad. But at that time I was really fast. It seemed that even the monster hunter's trials weren't important anymore. In the Exorcist Mountain Pass, when we lived in the dormitory, you built a small home for us as if there was no one else around. That time also touched me the most. I swore in my heart that I would give you a warm home in the future. It's all my fault. I didn't take good care of you and let you suffer so much. Long Houchen spoke slowly. His voice was very gentle, like a clear spring that cleansed Kai-er's heart. Until the moment she leaned on his shoulder and fell asleep. On the other side, Yu Yi had long since become infatuated. She listened even more attentively than Kai-er. This kind of day passed for a whole 3 days. Every day, Long Houchen would unceasingly speak and feed Kai-er. As for the private matters of a girl's physiology, it was naturally taught by Yu Yi to Kai-er. Long Houchen spoke in great detail. Moreover, he kept repeating it tirelessly. After 3 days of contact, Kai-er finally didn't reject him anymore. Instead, she somewhat relied on him. However, she still couldn't remember anything. She could only barely remember everything that Long Houchen said. Kai-er didn't lose her strength. Instead, it greatly increased. The only good news was that she still had her battle instincts. The only thing she could remember was the skills of those assassins. Moreover, according to what Kai-er said, she seemed to have grasped a new ability. As for what it was, she herself wasn't too clear about it. According to Long Houchen's judgment, she still needed to comprehend it one step further before she could use it. And this new ability was naturally related to her identity as the Grim Reaper's favored. After a few days of contact, the amnesiac Kai-er had gradually accepted Long Houchen. However, she was now like a blank sheet of paper, ignorant of the world's affairs. She only treated him as a reliable friend. She didn't have the feelings that she used to have. Yu Yi had seen Long Houchen dejected more than once when Kai-er was asleep or cultivating. We should go back. Kai-er, are you ready? Long Houchen said to Kai-er. Yes. Kai-er nodded gently. Her big eyes blinked. She was more lively than before. Long Houchen sighed in his heart. After bidding farewell to Yu Yi, he activated the Eternal Melodies teleportation. The golden light shone and enveloped the 3 of them. Kai-er subconsciously leaned closer to Long Houchen. She grabbed his sleeve and closed her eyes tightly. She looked very nervous. Yu Yi also quietly leaned closer to Long Houchen. She stole a glance at Long Houchen, but she saw that all his attention was on Kai-er. The golden light shone. When the 3 of them reappeared in the wilderness, it was dark outside. The sky was gloomy. There was no light from the moon or stars, so everything around them seemed very dim. All right, Kai-er. We're back on the mainland. Long Houchen gently touched her. Kai-er opened her eyes and looked around curiously. Is this our original world? Long Houchen smiled. Yes. You'll be able to see our companions soon. You'll always be by my side, right? Kai-er asked expectantly. Long Houchen nodded. Always. Kai-er giggled. That's good. You're a good person. I remember everything you said. You're my boyfriend, right? Long Houchen chuckled. Yes. I'll always be by your side and protect you. Yes. Kai-er nodded firmly. Long Houchen, I have to go. Yu Ye's voice sounded from the other side. Long Houchen turned to look at her, only to see a lonely, delicate face. Go back. Don't think too much. If you need our help with anything, you can ask the Yu Yi merchant group to come to the Holy City to find me. We've already completed most of the missions we've accepted. Perhaps we won't continue with the missions. I want to take Kai-er back to see her parents. I want to see if I can help her remember something. Yu Yi suddenly fell silent. She lowered her head, and it was hard to tell what she was thinking. Long Houchen looked at her doubtfully. On the other side, Kai-er also poked her head over. However, she clearly didn't have a good impression of Yu Yi. She even looked at her with hostility. Yu Yi suddenly raised her head and looked straight at Long Houchen. Snake demon god Andamari is in the Andu province in the east. It's said that he's been looking for something in the dark swamp of the Andu province recently. Andamari has a suspicious nature and is powerful. He always carries his demon god pillar with him. Although he's ranked last among the 72 demon god pillars, his subsidiary race, snake demons, are very powerful. Otherwise, he wouldn't be guarding a province alone. If you want to deal with him, you must first kill the 4 Medusas around him. Don't ever look into the Medusa's eyes. If they see you, you must kill them before you can't resist the petrification. Otherwise, you will never be able to recover. Medusas are rank 6 demons. Ordinary snake demons are mostly between rank 3 and rank 5. Long Houchen looked at her in surprise. Yu Yi laughed self-deprecatingly. It's nothing. I'll just take it as a reward for consoling me. If you want to get more information from me in the future, you'll have to pay a high price. I'm leaving. As she spoke, she turned around and walked into the distance. However, she didn't take more than a few steps before she stopped and suddenly turned around. After giving Kaia a provocative look, she said to Long Houchen, "If you had met me first, I would have definitely made you fall in love with me and not her." Purple light flashed. When Yu Yi turned around again, she had already flown up. Her eyes were filled with tears, as if they would overflow at any time. Long Houchen looked at her in shock and was speechless for a moment. Actually, he was not a slow person. It was just that in the past few days, he had been focused on Kaia and did not pay much attention to Yu Yi. Yu Ye's words were undoubtedly very explosive to his ears. For a moment, he could not help but be unable to change his thoughts. What's the big deal? Kaia stuck out her tongue in the direction where Yu Yi had left. I could tell that she was up to no good from the start. Long Houchen, tell me, do you like her or me? Looking at Kai's stubborn little face, Long Houchen couldn't help but feel like he didn't know whether to laugh or cry. However, he also felt a little strange in his heart, as the previous Kaia would never ask him such a question. Kaia was originally more introverted, but after losing her memory, she became very extroverted. At this moment, wasn't she like a little girl in a fit of pique? Of course I like you. In this life, I will only like you. Long Houchen gently held her hand and said seriously. Kaia avoided his gaze in a panic, and also pulled back her hand. Don't be like this. I feel a little strange. Didn't you say you were going to bring me to find my companions? Let's go. Grand Jacques City, Regimental Headquarters. For the past few days, the atmosphere in the entire regimental headquarters had been gloomy. Whether it was the King Tier No. 17 Monster Hunters or the General Tier Monster Hunt 64, every member's mood was very gloomy. Especially the 5 General Tier Monster Hunt 64 members, they were extremely suppressing their emotions. If it was not because of the soul chain that they could sense that Long Houchen and Kaia were still alive, they were afraid that their emotions would have already exploded. In the past few days, they couldn't help but go out twice to look for traces of Long Houchen and Kaia, but to no avail. After a short rest, Tianqing and his teammates had been thinking of ways to find traces of Long Houchen and Kaia. Although Tianqing didn't say anything, it could be seen from his bloodshot eyes that his mood was not calm. That's right, how could he be calm? It was because of his wrong decision that caused the 2 Monster Hunters teams to fall into a desperate situation. If it was not for Long Houchen, perhaps none of them would have been able to return alive. At this time, they were safe, but the fate of Long Houchen and Kaia was unknown. This was worse than killing him. Han Yu, let's go to the Demon's Heart City to find the boss. Wang Yuan suddenly stood up and said in a deep voice. In the absence of Long Houchen, Han Yu was the other knight in the team and temporarily took the position of the team leader for Long Houchen. I agree. Sima Xian stood up abruptly. His fists were clenched so tightly that the veins on his arms were visible. When they left the holy city, each of them felt that their strength had greatly increased. However, when they really came to the battlefield of the demons, especially the previous battle, they realized how insignificant their strength was. At critical moments, they couldn't help Long Houchen at all. In the face of so many strong demons, they didn't even have the chance to attack. Lin Xian and Chen Inger also stood up with red eyes. All four eyes were focused on Han Yu. Han Yu looked at them and slowly stood up. From a rational point of view, I should stop you. This time, there is at least a 90% chance that we will stay there forever. I can't let you take the risk so easily. But F*CK with rationality. Let's go. As he said that, he pulled Wild Red Blood beside him and was the first to walk out of the door. Just as the five of them walked out of the door, their path was blocked by a tall figure. Get out of the way! Sima Xian shouted. He directly picked up the vigorous light pill in his hand. The person blocking their way was the King Class No. 17 Monster Hunters team leader, Tian Qing. I can't let you go. I've already made a wrong decision. I can't make another mistake. Long Haochen isn't here. I must protect you for him. Get lost! Sima Xian angrily shouted again. This time, he was even more impolite. He also raised the vigorous light pill in his hand. The other Commander Class Monster Hunt 64 members also released their spiritual power. They had been suppressing their dissatisfaction with Tian Qing for a long time. Tian Qing took a deep breath. If killing me can reduce the sadness in your hearts, I will never fight back. But we are demon hunters. How can we die in the hands of our own people? I know that everything is my fault. Please give me a chance to redeem myself. I don't have too many requests. Just give me the opportunity to go to the Heart City. If within 10 days, I and my companions can't bring back any news, then it won't be too late for you to act. Haochen is facing a crisis because of my wrong decision. Even if I have to die, please let me die in front of you. I just hope that before I die, I can drag a few people down with me. At this point, his body suddenly surged with a powerful aura. As a Mithril Foundation Knight, he was already at the peak of the 7th rank. After the battle with a bow, he was infinitely close to the 8th rank. His words were filled with determination. These past few days, the 5 Commander Class Monster Hunt 64 members were grieving. How could his mood be good? In fact, it was even more painful. After waiting for a few days, there was no news. In fact, everyone's heart was already prepared for the worst. At this moment, he didn't want to wait any longer to endure this torment. Sima Xian's face eased a bit. He lightly said, saying these things is meaningless. Please step aside. What you want to do has nothing to do with us. But boss is our leader. We only believe in our own strength. Unless you kill us, you can't stop us from leaving. As he said that, his body began to be surrounded by purple lightning. His whole body burst out with killing intent. Sima, calm down. Han Yu shouted. As he said that, he walked to Sima Xian's side and said to Tian Qing, Leader Tian Qing, regarding the previous actions, we do not want to say anything more. You know how your command was, but the mistake has already been made. Even if we blame you, we will not be able to save the leader. Now, please do not stop us. What Sima said is right. What you do is up to you. Finding the leader is something we must do. We can confirm that the leader and vice leader are still alive. As long as there is a glimmer of hope, we will not give up. Tian Qing silently shook his head. Even if I have to defeat all of you, I will not let you pass. Come. Defeat you? Then defeat you. Sima Xian could not hold back any longer. The group headquarters was narrow, but it did not affect his vigorous light ball. The huge metal ball in his hand was about to hit Tian Qing. Sima, stop. A clear voice came from behind Tian Qing. Hearing this voice, the vigorous light ball that Sima Xian was about to throw suddenly fell to the ground. The huge vibration caused everyone's ears to ring. Everyone was stunned for a moment. Then, everyone's eyes revealed an inconceivable joy. Tian Qing suddenly turned around and saw that not far behind him was Long Haochen striding towards him in large strides. Kair followed behind him with a face full of curiosity and apprehension. Boss! Sima Xian shouted. He strode towards Long Houchen. His strong body directly knocked away Tian Qing, who was in front of him. In just a few steps, he arrived in front of Long Houchen. He opened his arms and gave him a big bear hug. Not just him, all the members of the 64th Commander Grade Demon Hunt Squad were filled with excitement, even screaming as they charged towards Long Houchen. Even someone as strong as Han Yu couldn't help but tear up. The excitement of reuniting after a disaster made everyone's blood boil. This excitement couldn't be described with words. Chen Yinger even rushed to hug Long Houchen and kissed him on the cheek. This made Long Houchen's face turn red. Kair subconsciously took a few steps back. She opened up the distance between her and Long Houchen. She curiously looked at the strange people in front of her. Although she, who had lost her memory, did not understand why such a situation had occurred, she could vaguely feel the sincere feelings everyone had for Long Houchen. After Long Houchen hugged his companions, he suddenly saw Tian Qing silently leaving. He hurriedly called out, "Big brother Tian Qing." Tian Qing's body stiffened. He stopped walking. He turned around and smiled bitterly. "I'm not worthy of you calling me big brother. Just call me by my name." Long Houchen strode towards Tian Qing. He hit his left chest with his right fist and gave him a knight's salute. Tian Qing almost subconsciously returned the salute. Long Houchen said in a deep voice, "Just one failure and you're discouraged? Although you were aggressive in this operation, I was also conservative. During the battle, you repeatedly proposed that you and your companions would cover our retreat. You didn't lose the honor of the knight. In my heart, you are still my elder brother, the knight. You shouldn't be discouraged. You should continue to lead your companions for the glory of the knight. For the future of humanity. Big brother Tian Qing, I don't blame you." Staring blankly at Long Houchen, Tian Qing's body began to tremble. His lips were trembling, but he couldn't say anything. He was an iron-blooded man, but at this moment, he couldn't stop his tears from flowing. "Long Houchen, I'm sorry." Tian Qing's knees softened. He was about to kneel down. Long Houchen quickly hugged him. "Big brother Tian Qing, everything is in the past. Aren't we still alive?" Many days of oppression completely broke out at this moment. As a powerful Mithril Foundation knight, he was definitely a man of steel who shed blood but never shed tears on the battlefield. However, at this moment, Sky Crystal was crying like a child. It could be seen how intense the pain in his heart was. However, being able to cry was obviously the best thing for him. Otherwise, if he couldn't vent his emotions, he was afraid that he would really be destroyed in a short period of time. Men and men hugging each other, it's a bit weird. A timid and shy voice suddenly sounded. Wang Yuan subconsciously said, "Yinger, don't make trouble." However, as soon as she said this, she felt that something was wrong. Because Chen Yinger was in front of her, staring dumbfoundedly at her back. Wang Yuan instantly turned around, and was shocked to see that Kai actually had a pitiful look on her face as she retreated to the side, peeking at them. It was not only the two of them, the rest of the General Class Monster Hunt 64 team could not help but stare blankly. In their hearts, Kai had always been cold, silent, courageous, and strong. In the team, they respected Long Houchen the most, but the one they feared the most was definitely Kai. Although Kai rarely spoke, but when she needed to stand up, she could immediately replace Long Houchen's position in the team, and no one would doubt her. Her formidable strength was obvious to everyone. She could even kill a Type 8 powerhouse in a second. All along, she and Long Houchen were the twin cores of the team. Who would have thought that, at this time, Kai would suddenly say such a sentence? This could no longer be described as strange. Kai subconsciously moved towards Long Houchen's side, and finally, in a flash, she hid behind Long Houchen, and grabbed his clothes from behind. Long Houchen helped Tian Qing up, and seeing the surprised looks of his companions, his eyes slightly dimmed, and said, "It's okay, let's go back and talk. Brother Tian Qing, Your complexion is not good, we have safely returned, you should also take a good rest. We can't continue to stay in Grand Jacques City, it's better to leave as soon as possible. Right, return the Mithril Foundation battle armor to brother. As he said that, he released the silver box in front of Tianqing. Chapter 144. Tianqing didn't take it. He shook his head and said, I'm no longer qualified to wear this armor. I'll give it to you, brother. Long Houchen smiled and shook his head. No, brother. Do you think that with my strength, I can't win a set of Mithril Foundation armor from Knights Templars? Tianqing suddenly said, Yes, with your strength, it's not difficult to get a Mithril Foundation armor. This is an honor that belongs to you. Long Houchen, it's great that you're safe. I won't say anything else, but I don't deserve to be your brother. In the future, if there's anything you need help from our team, no matter if it's a mountain of swords or a sea of fire, we won't hesitate. We'll rest for a bit and then we'll leave. I won't say goodbye to you. After that, he gave a knight's salute to all the General Tier Monster Hunt 64 members and left with a look of shame. He really didn't have the face to stay any longer. This knot in his heart couldn't be solved in a short time. Tianqing secretly vowed in his heart that one day, he will repay this favor, even if it's with his life. Leader, what about Kai Wang Yuanyuan asked doubtfully. Long Houchen was silent for a moment. The pain in his eyes was clear to everyone. Let's go back to the room and talk. As he said that, he turned to Kai and nodded, then led her inside. The rooms in the regiment headquarters weren't big. It was a bit crowded with 7 people in a room, but the atmosphere was even more depressing. Damn demons! Sima Xian fiercely punched the wall next to him. After listening to Long Houchen's story, everyone's mood could be imagined. Kai just quietly listened to the side, occasionally looking at Long Houchen with an innocent look that was a little afraid of strangers. Can you tell me who is who first? Kai didn't seem to feel the sorrow of everyone, but curiously asked. After losing her memory, she seemed to be very timid, but she was very curious about everything. Everyone suppressed the sadness in their hearts and introduced themselves. Kai looked at them seriously, then hid behind Long Houchen. Long Houchen's cheek muscles twitched. He took a deep breath and slowly said, My body has basically recovered. Let's discuss our next move. Kai had lost her memories, but her strength had increased. It was just that with her current personality, it was hard to say how much strength she could display. We've already completed most of the 16 missions we received this time. What's left are only the 3 missions of killing the snake demon god Andromalius, killing 100 ordinary snake demons, and killing 2 Medusas of the snake demon race. According to Yu Ye's information, the snake demon god Andamari is in the Andu province in the east, and oversees all affairs in the province. I've checked the map. The Andu province is located in the northeast of the central province, and it's quite far away. It's already at the eastern end of the continent, and further east is the ocean. But because it's far from the Alliance, the defense isn't too strict. The demon's biggest mission there is to fish in the ocean to make up for the lack of food for the demons. If we were to go to the Andu province to carry out the mission, other than killing Andamari, the other 2 missions wouldn't be too difficult. Moreover, Yu Yi said that Andamari is looking for something in the dark swamp of the Andu province. If we can form a situation where the 7 of us surround and attack him, we should have a chance to kill him. The only thing I'm worried about now is Kai's condition. Her battle instincts are still there, but her mentality. You've all seen it. But this information wasn't easy to come by, so we can't give up so easily. Kai's strength can only be temporarily disregarded. When carrying out the mission, I might let her stay in the Tower of Eternity. This makes it even more difficult for us to kill Andromalius. Of course, the best-case scenario is if Kai can recover her memories or recover her ability to fight. After this mission, I want to bring her back to the Exorcist Mountain Pass to reunite with her family. Perhaps, with the influence of her family, her memory recovery will be a little faster. Han Yu said in a low voice, Captain, if we don't have Vice Captain's help, if we want to kill Snake Demon God, I'm afraid. Long Houchen nodded slightly and said, Yes, it'll be very difficult. But it's not like there's no good news. After the battle with a bow, my cultivation broke through, and I'm now at the 7th order. We have to complete the other 2 missions at the very least. As for killing Snake Demon God, we'll do it according to our ability and not force it. I've thought about it carefully these past few days. Originally, I planned to immediately return to the alliance with Kair. But after careful consideration, Kair has cultivated for so many years, and in battle, perhaps it would be able to stimulate her thoughts, perhaps helping her recover a little. I'll protect her well. So, we'll make a trip to the Andu province. After listening to his explanation, everyone couldn't help but nod slightly, a strong fighting spirit rising in their hearts. In the previous battle, when besieged by the 6 teams of demons, Long Houchen could be said to have relied on his own strength to save 2 teams of monster hunters, bearing all the pressure by himself. Kair had even lost her memories, so how could they feel good? Everyone had varying degrees of self-blame in their hearts, and their hatred towards the demons deepened a bit. This kind of deep hatred could only be washed away with the blood of demons. News from outside showed that the atmosphere in Jacques City was very solemn. Almost all the Jacques demons were patrolling the streets, and there were still 2 teams of demon hunters guarding the city. Not only that, but there were even a large number of riders patrolling outside the city. Obviously, they were looking for traces of them. Previously, when Long Houchen and Kair returned, although they didn't encounter any trouble, they still avoided several patrols before returning. Night fell, and taking advantage of the darkness, figures quietly walked out of the small restaurant. Everyone was covered with a large cloak, and the one in the lead was Long Houchen, who was wearing a brilliant holy armor. They didn't leave Jacques City through the secret passage, but directly walked out of the headquarters after nightfall. Kair was beside Long Houchen, looking around curiously. Her big eyes were blinking. For someone who had lost her memories, anything she saw now was very novel. At this time, they all wore their magic eyes, turning their eyes purple, completely resembling the moon devils, but each of their eyes was full of dense killing intent. Long Houchen slightly identified the direction and said in a low voice, According to the map drawn by the people of the headquarters, the mayor's mansion should be in that direction. Let's go. As he said that, he took the lead and moved in a certain direction. Right now, the entire Jacques province was in a state of panic. There were a total of 7 of them, and if they wanted to leave quietly, the possibility of being discovered was very high, and it was almost inevitable that they would be chased. Long Houchen's plan was very simple. Raid the mayor's mansion in Jacques City, create chaos in the city, and let the demons call back the forces outside, so that they could leave more smoothly. This was undoubtedly a risky move, but under the premise that they had the support of the Tower of Eternity, it wasn't very dangerous. Moreover, although there were 2 or more teams of demon hunters in Jacques City, they wouldn't appear in the first place. What they wanted to do was to strike and then retreat, and they wouldn't get entangled in the battle. The group of 7 people quickly moved towards the mayor's mansion, and just after crossing a street, they ran into a Jacques patrol. A team of 20 Jacques demons blocked the way, and the leading Jacques demon shouted, "Who are you? Take off the cloaks on your head." Long Houchen slowly raised his head, and 2 sharp rays of light burst out from his eyes. He coldly shouted, "Moon devils are doing business, do you want to die?" He raised his hand, and showed his Moon Devil Viscount token. The Jacques demons were stared at by his purple eyes, and immediately fell back 2 steps. They hurriedly said respectfully, "So it's Lord Moon Devils, please, please." Long Houchen coldly snorted, fully displaying the arrogance of the Moon Devils. He ignored these Jacques demons, and continued to move forward with his companions. The defense in Jacques City was really tight. The distance from the regimental headquarters to the mayor's mansion wasn't very far, but in the process, they encountered 5 teams of patrolling soldiers. However, with the identity of the Moon Devils, they didn't encounter any difficulties. The Viscount token and Long Houchen's handsome appearance, which was extremely similar to the Moon Devils, played a great role. The mayor's mansion was already in sight. Compared to the mayor's mansions in the cities of the Temple League, this could only be described as simple and crude. The mansion was only 2 stories high, but the area it occupied was not small. However, the building was old and many places were obviously damaged, and there were traces of poor repair. Long Houchen led his companions to a dark corner of the street and gave Lin Xian a look. At the same time, a golden light flashed on his body, and Yiting quietly appeared beside him. With Long Houchen's strength recovering, Yiting had naturally also completely recovered. Long Houchen nodded to Lin Xian and said, "Get ready. When Yiting's magic starts, you will also start." Lin Xian nodded, and his eyes were filled with excitement and even cruelty. He raised his hand, and a stack of magic scrolls appeared in his palm. Yiting raised the scepter in her hand, and a clear and melodious chant sounded. Long Houchen and the others surrounded her in the center, trying to cover the golden light emitted from her body as much as possible. Yiting's chant was melodious and long, and the aura of light elements emitted from her body became more and more intense. The huge aura of light gradually couldn't be covered, and gradually spread outwards. There were gradually movements in the mayor's mansion. How could such intense light elements not attract the attention of the Jacques demons? Hurried footsteps sounded, and soon, a team of patrolling Jacques demons appeared in the sight of Long Houchen and the others. "What are you doing there?" The Jacques demons quickly rushed towards Long Houchen and the others. Long Houchen's eyes turned cold, and he said in a deep voice, "Leave no one alive." Just as his voice fell, Wang Yuanyuan had already walked out in large strides. She crossed 3 meters with each step, and her left foot heavily stamped on the ground. Her entire body was practically flying towards the patrolling Jacques demons. Those Jacques demons subconsciously raised their spears and threw them at Wang Yuanyuan. Wang Yuanyuan didn't even try to dodge. She didn't even use the Divine Soul shield to protect her body. The silver spatial protection armor on her body rippled with a layer of faint silver light, and the solidified spatial shield took effect. All the spears that fell on her body were instantly bounced off. What followed was the scene of a tiger entering a flock of sheep. Wang Yuanyuan raised the Divine Soul shield in her hand, and made a horizontal slashing motion. Immediately afterward, the huge shield flew out horizontally. Blood-curdling screams and bursts of blood filled the entire street. Compared to the Divine Soul shield, the bodies of the Jacques demons were simply too fragile. In front of that terrifyingly heavy shield, they couldn't escape the fate of dying without a whole corpse. Kai Er's eyes widened. She hid behind Long Houchen, and her delicate body was even somewhat trembling. The scene before her eyes was too stimulating. Seeing the severed limbs of the Jacques demons fluttering in the air, and seeing the bursts of blood splattering on the walls on both sides of the street, her small face was already pale. She had been with Wang Yuanyuan and Chen Inger for the past few days. She had never thought that this tall girl, who had always been very kind to her, would actually have such an ability. Moreover, she was actually so fierce. Long Houchen silently looked at Kai, feeling the changes in her mood, but he didn't say anything. Kai had lost her memory, so she needed all kinds of stimulation to awaken her memories. For her, fighting was an indispensable part of this. 20 Jacques demons were simply not enough in front of Wang Yuanyuan. The anger in her heart finally had a place to vent. She didn't use any skills at all. She relied entirely on her own fighting skills and the tyrannical destructive power of the Divine Soul shield. By the time she stopped, none of the Jacques patrolling could breathe. However, there were already more Jacques demons rushing over here. Long Houchen said to Kai in a low voice, "You have to follow me closely." Don't be afraid, I will protect you. No matter when, as long as I am still alive, I will definitely stand in front of you and use my life to protect you." She didn't know why, but after hearing his words, the fear in Kai-Er's eyes lessened a bit. She only felt that at this moment, this very good-looking man seemed to suddenly give her a feeling of being as firm as a rock. This feeling of steadfastness greatly reduced the fear in her heart. Almost subconsciously, Kai-Er took the initiative to hold Long Houchen's hand for the first time after losing her memory. Her little hand was a bit cold. Long Houchen almost subconsciously wrapped her hand in his warm palm, and gently smiled at her. At this time, the battle had already started. The position that Long Houchen and the others chose was a dead end. Therefore, the enemies could only appear from one side. After Wang Yuanyuan finished the first round of killing, Sima Xian went up and exchanged places with Wang Yuanyuan. Compared to Wang Yuanyuan, Sima Xian's heart was more oppressed, and his venting was also more terrifying. The vigorous ball of light flew straight out in this narrow street, and the Jacques demons almost couldn't even dodge it. Under the divine giant soul shield, there were at least some broken limbs, but when it came to the vigorous ball of light, what burst out was just a big cloud of minced meat. The crushing skill was fully activated, and coupled with the crushing and triple explosion that came with the vigorous ball of light, it could be said that it was invincible. Not to mention the ordinary Jacques demons, when the first Jacques commander of the sixth step came here and faced the vigorous ball of light head-on, the result could be imagined. Its spear was broken and it was sent flying. Then, it was directly killed by Sima Xian. Yuting's incantation was finally completed. She raised the magic staff in her hand, and when she finished the last syllable, a ball of dazzling golden light full of sparkling and translucent color rose into the sky. This ball of golden light became bigger and bigger as it rose into the sky. But because it was getting farther away, it gave people the feeling that its volume never changed, as if it had always been that big. However, when this golden ball of light rose to the top and began to fall down, its volume began to expand in everyone's eyes. And its target was the city lord's mansion of Jacques Grand. Long Houchen nodded towards Lin Xian. Lin Xian immediately took action. A crimson scroll suddenly unfolded, and incomparably strong fire elements suddenly burst out. Countless fireballs the size of a human head shot out from this scroll like a continuous barrage of cannons. Lin Xian held the scroll in one hand, and his fire crystal staff in the other. Relying on his formidable control over magic, he directed these fireballs to roar out, first sending a portion of them towards the entrance of the street, while the majority of them fell directly into the city lord's mansion. This was a Grade 5 offensive magic scroll, Fire Rain. It was a miniature version of Meteor Shower, but its power was absolutely extraordinary. Each and every one of those fireballs was not an ordinary one, but an explosive fireball. Coupled with Lin Xian's precise control, a terrifying roar resounded in the city lord's mansion. Moreover, this was just the beginning. The scroll in Lin Xian's hand kept changing, and in just a short while, he had torn 6 scrolls, 3 of which were Grade 5 and 3 of which were Grade 6. 6 powerful fire offensive magic spells all smashed into the city lord's mansion. At this moment, a sharp whistling sound came from afar. From the sound, it could be determined that a powerhouse was coming this way. And at this time, the golden ball of light that Yiting had cast finally fell. When the ball of light approached the city lord's mansion, everyone was shocked to see that the size of this ball of light had actually reached a diameter of 10 meters. "Is it really that scary?" Lin Xian said, dumbfounded. Immediately afterward, a terrifying white light rose from the city lord's mansion. The huge white light rose to a height of 100 meters, like a geyser. Almost the entire Great Jacques city was lit up. The terrifying light elemental fluctuations made even Long Houchen, a god's chosen of the goddess of light, palpitate. After Yiting released this magic spell, she returned to Long Houchen's body. This spell consumed almost all of her magic power, and the chanting time was so long. This proved a problem, and that was the level of magic. This was a grade 8 spell, and also the most powerful magic that Yiting could use after Long Houchen's cultivation advanced to the 7th grade. It was called Falling Light. Even among grade 8 spells, the power of Falling Light was among the best. However, this spell also had many flaws. Yiting used it above her rank, so the chanting time was extremely long, and the consumption was huge. She even consumed half of Long Houchen's spiritual power to complete this spell. Moreover, the casting time of Falling Light was also very long. The original ball of light soared into the sky, constantly absorbing the light elements in the air to strengthen itself. This spell itself was like a huge magnet, relying on absorbing a large amount of light elements in the air to strengthen itself. Otherwise, Yiting would not have been able to use it. In addition, when Falling Light fell, it could only attack a fixed target, but could not completely lock onto it. Therefore, it was perfect to use it to blow up buildings. "Let's go," Long Houchen said in a low voice. The 4 wings on his back suddenly spread out. He took Kai Er's hand and rose into the air with his companions. They rushed out of the street like lightning, then quickly retracted their spiritual wings and went to another street. Then, they quickly moved forward in the direction of the regimental headquarters. At this time, the city of Jacques Grand was already in chaos. The Castellan's mansion had been bombarded by Lin Xian and Yiting's magic. At this time, it was already a mess. The attack of Falling Light, in particular, was too terrifying. At least 4 Jacques commanders were directly killed. In order to protect the Castellan's mansion, the only Jacques leader of the grade 8 forcibly resisted Falling Light with his own strength, and as a result, was seriously injured. In the Castellan's mansion, a huge pit with a diameter of more than 100 meters and a depth of up to 15 meters replaced the original main building of the Castellan's mansion. The whole process was too sudden. From the time Yiting's magic waves were discovered to the completion of the spell, only a quarter of an hour had passed. When the 2 demon hunting teams received the news and rushed over, the attack had already been completed, leaving them a scene of chaos. Meanwhile, Long Houchen and the others had already flown away. They smoothly returned to the regimental headquarters and killed several teams of patrolling soldiers along the way. Long Houchen didn't stop after entering the tunnel. He took his companions through the tunnel and out of the city. Then, under the cover of the night, they immediately headed northeast. Everything was within Long Houchen's plan. Launching an attack on the Castellan's mansion of Jacques Grand wasn't an impulsive decision, but a decision he had made after careful consideration. This attack would not only effectively kill some Jacques demons, but more importantly, it would attract the enemy's attention. This was equivalent to telling the enemy that they were in Jacques Grand and hadn't left. At least for a period of time, the enemy's line of sight would still be attracted to Jacques Grand, and they would have already taken this opportunity to escape, heading straight for the Andu province. Although Kai didn't lose her ability, she didn't seem to be very good at using it. She was always being pulled along by Long Houchen. Her face also looked a little pale, obviously frightened by the previous massacre. Her behavior only made everyone feel more uncomfortable. Once upon a time, when had Kara, the Queen of Assassins and the Saintess of Samsara, ever been afraid of killing demons? The rest of the journey went smoothly. With the help of Lin Xian's appraisal eye and Han Yu's evil eye Lord's Eye of Truth, they avoided many demons who had received the news and rushed to Jacques Grand. Overnight, they ran more than 300 miles. Finally, they were out of the search range of Jacques Province. What they didn't know was that not long after they left, a large number of demons and moon devils, mainly demons, came to Jacques Grand. They almost turned the city upside down, looking for their traces. In the end, the regimental headquarters of Jacques Grand was found, and all the members of the regimental headquarters were dead. However, in the end, they couldn't find traces of Long Houchen's group of 7. After that, the demons also began a big operation that they hadn't seen in 100 years. They rushed all the way. Because they had enough food and water, they tried their best to avoid the demon cities. They all followed the wilderness paths, using the map and sunlight to guide the way. Day and night they rushed to the Andu province in the northeast. As Yu Yi once said, the more eastern the demons were, the more lax their defense would be, but the population would increase accordingly. This was because the eastern coast itself was one of the lifelines of the demons. Without the sufficient food brought by fishing along the coast, the demons would have long been unable to resist attacking the Temple League. The journey was smooth. When they encountered the demons, they used their identity as moon devils to cover up and pass smoothly. Most of the time, they traveled in the wilderness at an extremely fast speed. However, for safety's sake, they didn't use their spiritual wings. After a full 15 days, they finally entered the territory of the Andu province. The dark swamp was located in the north of the Andu province, so they had to keep moving north. Although everything went smoothly, Long Houchen's mood was still depressed because Kai didn't show any signs of getting better. She became more silent than when she first woke up, even a little confused. Every day, she just silently followed Long Houchen, and only looked at some novel things. Long Houchen often saw her look of helplessness. Every time this happened, his heart ached so much that he couldn't breathe. Moreover, he didn't care too much about her. Once he showed too much intimacy, Kai would be scared and avoid him. Fortunately, she didn't show any signs of attacking him. Kai didn't trust anyone very much. She was only slightly closer to Long Houchen. Moreover, she would suffer from headaches from time to time. Every time this happened, her face would be abnormally pale. However, the spiritual power fluctuations in her body would become extremely strong. When Long Houchen checked Kai-er's spiritual power several times, he found that although Kai-er didn't deliberately cultivate, her spiritual power was increasing very quickly. Her total spiritual power had already broken through 8,500 and was rushing towards the 10,000 mark. At this speed, she would probably reach the bottleneck of the 6th rank to the 7th rank in less than half a year. Regarding her current situation, Long Houchen couldn't do anything. He could only take good care of her and let her recover on her own. However, her current state made Long Houchen feel that her recovery was still far away. Looking at the barren land, Long Houchen stopped and frowned. No wonder the alliance kept catching up to the demons. The gap in strength between the two sides was also rapidly closing. Just looking at the rear, he could see many things. The biggest weakness of the demons was that they didn't produce, which made them face several serious problems. The first was food, housing, and transportation. It looked very simple and very basic, but it was a big problem that troubled the demons. Just solving the problem of food was enough to give the demon emperor, a super powerful being, a headache. On the east side of the continent, the land was fertile. However, what Long Houchen saw were large patches of wormwood growing on the plains. If such fertile land was used for cultivation, it would definitely be a fertile field. Who knew how many people could be fed? Although there were no clear statistics, according to the Temple League's estimates, the annual food production of the Temple League was at least 10 times that of the demons, relying on its 1/4 of the continent's area. In terms of total population, humans were only 1/3 of the demons. This was also an important reason why the demons often reduced their population through war. Low-level demons bred too quickly, so the problem of food was really too difficult. "Leader, how far are we from the swamp?" Han Yu came to Long Houchen's side and asked. Long Houchen said, "About 400 miles away. If everything goes smoothly, we'll reach it in a day. However, we should still go to this place first." As he said that, he spread out the map in his hand and pointed at a small dot on it. "This is?" Han Yu looked up at Long Houchen in surprise. "Demon City?" Long Houchen nodded and said, "This is a small town, it doesn't even have a name. Everyone has been hurrying along and is a little tired. We might be facing a demon god next, so we naturally have to adjust our condition to the best. To do a good job, we must first sharpen our tools." We can't be too hasty. Anyway, if the snake demon god was looking for something in the dark swamp, it wouldn't be a day or two. We'll rest in this small town for a day, then enter the swamp. Everyone listened to Long Houchen and nodded subconsciously. They were extremely convinced by this young but incomparably outstanding leader of theirs. This was the prestige that Long Houchen had built up with his own ability. Let's make a slight change. A light flashed in Long Houchen's eyes. Then, 3 rays of light shone from his body. First, there was a flash of golden light. It was Yiting who appeared in front of everyone. Following that, there were 2 familiar figures. It was the tall and big Holy Guard No. 12, the red skeleton, and the ice-cold blue Holy Guard No. 1. Long Houchen took out a few cloaks from his bosom and handed them to them, indicating for them to put them on. These cloaks were obviously specially made for them. Soon, Yiting, Holy Guard No. 11 and Holy Guard No. 12 were all hidden in the cloak. As long as they lowered their heads slightly, no one could see their faces. Lin Xian said in surprise, "Boss, when did you make these cloaks?" Long Houchen smiled faintly and said, "During the time we were resting and reorganizing in the Grand Jacques City, I asked someone from the regiment to specially make these cloaks for us. It's time for them to come in handy." Everyone looked at each other. Soon, Han Yu was the first to understand. "Haha, now we have 10 people. Let's see how those demons can distinguish us." Along the way, they had been involved in a few small-scale battles. The reason was simple. Although they were wearing the attire of the Moon Demon clan, there were 7 of them. After encountering demons, the other party insisted on checking their attributes, and they had no choice but to kill them in a short fight. Long Houchen asked Holy Guard No. 11, Holy Guard No. 12, and Yiting to join the team. Didn't that make 10 people? It was the same number as the Demon Hunter team. Coupled with their disguise as Moon Devils, it was easy to be mistaken as a Demon Hunter team. Holy Guard No. 1's 3-meter-tall figure was nothing at all. Among the demons there were many with such a figure. "Let's go." Everyone went on the road again, and the formation changed a little. Long Houchen was still at the front, Kair behind him, Wang Yuanyuan and Sima Xian on both sides, while Han Yu, Chening and Lin Xian, Holy Guard No. 11, and Yiting were all in the middle of the team, and Holy Guard No. 12 was at the back. This greatly increased the number of people in the middle of the team. Such a formation was far stronger than the original monster hunters in terms of magic attack. Holy Guard No. 11 alone was enough to match the strength of 2 7th-grade magicians. It was because of their existence that Long Houchen had the confidence to challenge the demon god. Soon, they arrived at the small town shown on Long Houchen's map. It had to be said that the detailed map that Yu Yi gave to Long Houchen played a great role. As soon as they entered the town, they were stopped. A team of demon soldiers guarding the town blocked their way. Andu province was the territory of the snake demons. Naturally, these soldiers were the snake demons' clansmen. The snake demons looked a little strange. They didn't have legs. Their upper bodies were similar to humans, but they were slender. Their lower bodies had a big tail that swam directly on the ground. Don't underestimate these fellows without legs. They were good at moving in all kinds of terrains. Even in the water, they were fast. This was why the snake demons were arranged to be in Andu province, which was on the east side of the sea. There were more than 10 snake demons in this team. The leader of the snake demons had a very strong body. His thick tail was more than 4 meters long, and his upper body and the tip of his tail were more than 2 meters high. He held a 3-pronged heaven-supporting trident in his hand. The other snake demons behind him were much smaller than him. "Who are you? Take off your cloaks," the strong snake demon shouted. Its pair of green eyes with 3 pupils shone fiercely. The trident in its hand was pointed at Long Houchen and the others. Long Houchen raised his head and took off the cloak on his head. He said coldly, "Demon hunter exterminators? Do you want to die?" Seeing Long Houchen's purple eyes, the serpent demon was taken aback. Long Houchen's handsome appearance and purple pupils had already explained many things to him. However, the snake demon was very cautious. It restrained its tone and said in a deep voice, "Please show me your identification." The Demon Hunter Exterminators have the Demon Hunter Exterminators token. The Central Province has issued an order. There are some human demon hunters pretending to be moon devils and infiltrating our rank. Bastard! Long Houchen shouted angrily and waved his hand. Suddenly, a terrifying pressure rose from behind him. A dense dark aura mixed with an astonishing might erupted. The enormous pressure almost instantly caused the 10 snake demons in front of him to turn pale with fright, and they hurriedly retreated. A cold voice sounded behind Long Houchen. "Do you need any more proof? Do you want me to transform and show you what a heaven-defying demon dragon is? How dare you stop the dragon group from exterminating demon hunters?" Feeling the terrifying pressure from the heaven-defying demon dragon, the snake demons did not dare to say anything. They hurriedly retreated to the side and crawled on the ground. Their bodies trembled and they could not even speak. What kind of existence was the heaven-defying demon dragon clan? Any heaven-defying demon dragon clan expert was a terrifying existence that they must worship. If the ruler of the Central Province or even the ruler of the entire demons were angry, it was very likely that their entire clan would be implicated. The cold female voice faintly said, "Where is Andamari? Is he still in the dark swamp?"